Oh, you know what else, Chris?
Yes.
I probably would never do this on a podcast, but I made a couple notes of things I'm going to say.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
Well, because, you're probably one of the most people that you kind of remind me of, some of my like closest friends in home where it's always like trying to get to the bottom of something. You know what I mean? So I felt like I have a couple good theories that.
Oh, I fucking love this. You came prepared.
Yeah. Also, well, we've talked about this already, but I said your stuff that you post a lot of times feels very much directed for me. Like I'm the I'm the one target audience
being seen. What was one of the ones that's happened with?
Probably the most ever is because the idea that, hard work, you can't always just like hard work your way out of a problem. And I think, you become so accustomed to this is how I, excel over people. And then you're like, well, everyone's talented at a certain level. And then also these problems aren't that. And then on top of that, adding creativity into that is like even worse, right? Because sometimes stand up, it's like it almost feels silly when I'm just like, what might be the work is like you need to just like sit there and think.
Yep. Stare at the ceiling for a while.
Yeah, you're like, this is crazy, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you have to, and then you're like, well, how do you rationalize all those things of like, I'm trying to work hard, but at the same time, this isn't a problem that just requires more work?
I think creativity is one of these really unique domains that sits outside of like, there's very few problems in life that working harder won't make a bit better somehow.
Yeah.
But one of them...
But you've usually, a lot of times you've maxed that out, I guess.
Yeah, you're already foot to the floor, going as hard as you can.
Yeah, that's not the issue. You're not like lazy, right?
So I've been trying to write this for ages, and I'll see if this makes sense to you. So I've been thinking about, type A people and type B people.
Yeah.
So people that are sort of insecure overachievers that work too hard, and then the sort of lazy people that need to get off the couch. I've been really trying to sort of work this out. So type A problems, type B problems. I think type A people have a type B problem, and type B people have a type A problem. Insecure overachievers need to learn how to chill out and relax, and lazy people need to learn how to work harder and be disciplined. Given that you subscribe to me, I'm going to guess you're a type A person, a kind of walking anxiety disorder harnessed for productivity, as Andrew Wilkinson says. Type A people get no sympathy because a miserable but outwardly successful person always appears to be in a much more preferential position than a type B person being lazy but on the verge of bankruptcy. Goggins and Hormozy style advice reliably makes everyone more successful in the only way that you can get judged, outwardly, but there aren't many issues in life which can't be solved by just working harder a little bit, so everyone just smashes it with a hammer. But for a certain, perhaps minority cohort of people, they actually need to hear the opposite. We need like a parasympathetic Goggins, hashtag rest harder than me, and that's the creativity piece.
I'd probably even go a little further than that, where if you are a type A person, you're not going to respond to the idea of like, well, you just need to be more like you need a reason.
Chill out.
Yeah, you need a reason. I think the reason is, if you were like to really boil it down, it was that the like great ideas come from, making connections between things. And and so a lot of times you're building those like connections in your brain that you could now like use. Whereas a lot of times you're out of connection. So you're kind of, you know what I mean? So your brain, it's not just you need to like rest. It's that you need to, rejig your inputs and like centralize them. But then again, there was kind of a, in this stuff, which I not to keep complimenting you, obviously we're friends, but like whatever this is you do, I think you're one of the best at.
Thank you.
Whatever you call it.
Yeah, we're fucking talking.
But there's kind of like, when you're talking about the amount of like connections that you can have, that's why in a lot of ways, like the smartest people aren't good at creativity some ways, I think. So if you talk about, why are like the best comedians in the world not just the smartest people? Okay, for example, or the best artists a lot of times. And, obviously you could say, well, it's because, there's better options available to them and whatever, right? But still though, there's people that we probably know, mutual friends, they're like, you go, they're two people and you go, this is the smarter one and this is the guy's funnier. So it's not just career-wise, right? And I think the reason is and a lot of times it sits at, like 120 to 140 IQ, or probably like a lot of times top comedians are creative people. And, there's probably some smaller, less IQ ones. But the reason is, at a certain level, the more connections you have in your brain, you need to make shortcuts because it's exponential, right? So if you're 20% smarter or 40% smarter, that's actually not 40% more connections. That's, 8,000 times, however many, maybe, and at that level of connections, it starts to, multiply in a way that that might be millions more connections, right?
What would you say to the type A person listening that wants to become more creative? Like, you work hard, even though it might not seem like it from the outside, even though you might seem like you're like sort of just...
Well, I think the first step is to understand like whether that actually is the goal.
Do you need to be creative? Yeah,
because I think some people probably think they want to be creative, and they're like, well, you actually don't. There's so much like sacrifice for that. You know what I mean? It's like sexier, but it's also less like financially and every other way rewarding in general,
That's interesting. I agree with you. And I do think that the like hard work, the creativity being sexy, because it seems like, I know you're aloof, you're an artist. So, you're like fucking Salvador Dali with the twirling his mustache. But there's another bit, I think, where everyone prays at the altar of the Goggins, the Jocko, the 4:30 a.m. kettlebell swings and stuff. And I've never heard any of those guys talk about where they like embrace the muse from. I'm not hearing Jocko talk about like, my creativity spoke down to me from above as I went for a slow walk through a meadow. Like I'm not hearing that. So I think that there is a real place for the conversation about creativity. Where does sort of artistic inspiration come from? Coming up with solutions that aren't more of the same, but are genuinely novel and different to the problem that you've maybe been facing for ages.
Especially when you're talking about content, though, because that's the other part about it, is like creativity really, for a lot of people that are running businesses where they're putting out tons of content, like, there's that kind of, I think James Altucher had like a really good point about Jim Cramer, where he was kind of like, no, people joke about him being like wrong a lot and they've got the index, but he was really good at being, a hedge fund manager, and he was like one of the top guys. It's like, yeah, but Warren Buffett has 3 ideas a year, you know what I mean? Where it's like, if you got to have 10 ideas every day, it's like, well, they're not going to be good, or they're going to be borrowed.
Yep.
Which is kind of, like, I think, a lot of times I'll, when I'm doing stand up, I'll be like, okay, I'll spend, maybe 2 full days kind of like thinking, and I have a lot of systems that I'll do. I'll be like, okay, go through these words, and I go through old stuff. Then I kind of, whatever. I have whatever weird systems that I have to do. And I'm like, at the end of that week, if I have like 2 really good ideas, that's a lot.
It's so cool.
And some people are like, oh, I have 80 things to say a day. You're like, well, okay, you didn't make them up.
Yes. They've been adapted by somebody else. They're straight stolen from somebody else. I mean, it's cool in any industry, I think, where you get paid for the quality of your ideas, not the volume of your ideas. So, yeah. I mean, I know that you can't just tell one joke and walk off stage, so there is like a volume component.
Yeah.
But really what people are looking for, I mean, how long did Rogan's last special, from special to special, it's like 6 years or something, right? So he does it, and obviously...
Yeah, it's like a luxury position in some way.
He can do what he wants, but still...
I don't even just him, I mean, it's a luxury position in some ways to... Yeah, because it's, I guess to some degree, I kind of have heard people say that, but some of degree, you're like, duh. yeah, obviously, I'd rather be paid for my one good idea than
than pumping
grinding
out
in the trenches.
Shit tons of bad ones.
But you're like, how do you get there?
Your new special.
You have to be insanely leveraged, essentially.
Correct. Yeah, so what you're doing is you're looking to get paid for the quality of your ideas, not the quantity of your ideas. And also to have a really good idea give you a huge return, which is the Buffett approach, right? I think it's like... I don't know. I think some absurd amount of his net worth percentage-wise has come from like 5 decisions. It's less than 10 decisions. Coca-Cola was one of them. I think Apple was another one of them. Something else. And that's the position.
But to go back to your original point then, so now in like people making content and all this stuff, like what is that? It's the guy running the company. That's who it is.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Who gets paid for his one big decision. Because the other thing, you're like, well, yeah, you could, like, there doesn't exist. The only, when you describe the like artist who kind of exists in terms of like every once in a while he pops up with one great thing, those people are all like legacy people that are left over from like, or not left over, they're still around from a different era where it was different.
Oh, you think that you need to grind more and sort of
well, I guess there's like maybe in movie industry or books, there's people that kind of do that, but I don't even need to. It's just like, it's kind of like set up that way right now.
That's a really great point. Yeah, that
it's just like the game's the game a little bit right now.
That's such a good point. The world really is sort of rewarding the pace that people can pump stuff out at. And obviously if it's total crap, it doesn't matter. But there's people who are prolific from their volume at like an okay quality, way more than people that are prolific from their quality.
Yeah.
At like a pretty
Can
crappy
your like
volume.
90% be really funny?
Yes. But there's the tension obviously between creativity and the quantity of your work is that you need to do quite a lot of reps or publications or tweets or writings or whatever it is, drawings of your thing to be able to determine what's good and what's not. Like, you have to take tons of shots at goal. I mean, unless you're some savant that was just gifted to play the guitar like a genius from birth or whatever. But you need to write a ton of songs in order to work out that they're not good, and then you can create something which really is good, and then you can allow the creativity to sort of, no, now it speaks through me, and I can just be Rick Rubin and like, wear glasses, pop up, do something awesome, and fuck off again.
Even when that kind of, I was thinking that a lot in terms of like, the Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and Kanye West, and kind of rappers or musicians that have kind of been around forever, where you kind of are like, they were, when you think of like a young virtuoso and why is like a young person generally better than an older person at music? And it was like, well, because you're kind of a collection of a culture that you were like a part of, in the start. When you were in grade 6 or whatever, you're part of that music. So it's like you were a part of it, right? After you're older, it's, you're not going to be very much a part of music culture. You're not going to have like, you see the like intricacy of the fashion. You can kind of like study and analyze it, but you didn't like feel it.
Yep.
So I think when you talk about them being virtuoso, the actual technical component, but the impact on culture component, it kind of feels like they have, you're saying like, they just had it in them, but it's like, well, not really. They were like, came up at a time and they like processed that in a way to spit it. And they were able to be like part of what's happening next. But then how do they do it again? It was kind of like, they almost just watch what's happening with the new one. And then they go and sort of like pretend they're part of it.
That's a really good.
That's why you have it now. Now I have an auto-tune album. Now I have this. Now,
well, I suppose the first album can be groundbreaking and super interesting, but by album 4, are you reinventing it each time? No, it's the new people that are inventing something completely orthogonal.
Yeah,
and then you're repurposing what comes off that. Did you see that story that I found about Kanye West when he was writing? What was it? Betray the Throne, Enter the Throne. What was his fucking big album? Something the Throne. Anyway, so Kanye was writing.
Then Graduation.
No, he was writing one of his big albums, and apparently, some guy went in to sit down and just watch him work in the studio, and he had Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen in the studio with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fucking Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen doing here? Kanye just turned around quick as a flash and went, "They're my thermometer for what white girls like." Like, true story. Fucking wild. But yeah, like even then you have this guy who's super competent and has got this sort of illustrious history and some questionable politics. And he is still outsourced. He's got this, somebody in there that acts as like a finger on the pulse of.
Yeah, you
culture.
become like a good barometer for where things are going.
Yes.
But like you weren't
outsource
actually part of it because it's not possible.
Correct.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like I try to have a grasp on those things, so then they become not something that, because things can like piss you off where you're just, for example, like the content thing, you're like, what, the fact that that's the way the game is, or, the fact that I feel like a lot of these things can start to irritate you because it maybe isn't the way you want it to be, but then you just become agnostic to things that are just, well, that's how it is.
Well, I understand that like you can start to hate the game that you're being made to play, even though you sort of didn't want to do it. Or you get resentful about the fact, why is it like this? Why couldn't it be, back in the fucking 80s when I could take all this time and I didn't have to create all of this stuff. I could spend fucking 3 weeks walking through a meadow, coming up with an idea with Jocko. And I get it. But you're right. I think that working out a way to sort of, all right, this is the price of doing business at the moment.
Yeah.
It's just the entry cost to being in the world at this time. And look at all of the advantages where I can frictionlessly post some awesome that reaches a few million people. But on the flip side of that, I'm going to have to be a bit of a like content.
And then also if you can address it, you're like, well, how do I now react to it? You know what I mean?
Yes. And call it out.
I was kind of thinking about, so if you look at, there's kind of, there's different times in culture where, certain times where it's like, probably like 5 years ago, there's a lot of things it was hard to say things, you know what I mean? And it was very tense. And there was, kind of a lot of like truths to be said that weren't, part of the public discourse. And then now it's kind of like all the stuff's been said.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I was kind of thinking that if you look at what's, a lot of people in culture are right now, it's following from the front, if that makes sense. Where they're really like following, but if you think of like a mob of people, because if to some degree, there's, the media's being like, okay, we care about this now, we care about this now. But to some degree, it is a little organic of whether this group of people likes this candidate or we care about this, right? There is like organic directions of what, movements go in. And then it's kind of about people are like people that like were leaders of the last one. It's like them running around trying to catch up and act like they were leading. You know what I mean? So there's almost like people acting like they're leading groups of people, but really it just kind of went there, and then they kind of run, and then they
get
go
to the
back.
front.
They go, oh yeah, we care about this now, and then you.
Well,
I mean, I can think of like 20 examples, but there's so many people that they're following from the front louder.
That's a really fucking good insight that I hadn't considered. But you're right. It's the exact same. Good example might be in Pride Month every year, where the organizations change their flags. Mercedes and Xbox and fucking Nike or whatever change to a pride flag, but they only change to pride flags in countries where gender or like sexual orientation equality has already been reached.
Yeah, of course.
And in the Middle East, where it actually needs to be done on it, it's still the same. There's no change made at all. So that would be an example of like following from the front, where we're going to stake our claim and put the flag in the ground right here.
We're acting like we're leaders of this movement.
This has already been won. The place where it needs to be done is the place where you're like, zip.
Yeah, it definitely happens a lot in that kind of, media activism space. But it happens in everywhere. Yeah, you'll see, like you'll watch like the right-wing movement of like, what's the thing they're all talking about now, right? And then someone will be kind of, out front being like, leading the flag. And you're just like, you didn't talk about this 2 years ago. And it's like, well, why? It's like, well, you didn't lead them here, but you acting like you did.
The like full horseshoe fucking infinity loop of the Bud Light conversation's been pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah,
I got so much stick from people when I said, all right, I get it. Dylan Mulvaney, should he have got a fucking 6-pack of Bud Lights with the face on it? Probably bad move from a marketing department, but really, does this mean that Bud Light is infused to its very core with woke progressive ideals that show that they're the anti-American communist company that you always knew they were? Is that really the case? Or is it probably just some person, some intern somewhere that decided to do one thing? And the right is always we mustn't cancel people for one small slip up. That seems like way too judgmental. This person didn't mean to say that. And you go, you're not extending the same luxury, the same sort of charity to this other side. And then I got shit for that. And then fucking a Post Malone and Shane Gillis sponsorship later, everyone on the right's now fucking, what's his face? The guy that shot it up with the 50
But like did a pretty good job of making the comeback.
Fully like just fixed everything. The human centipeded everybody. And you're like, oh, okay. So like somehow everyone's asshole is in everybody else's mouth and it just sort of loops all the way around. So stuff like that. It's like people are so prepared to, even the outrage is like circular. They're prepared to be at the front of, well, actually being gracious with Bud Light. That's the position that we should take. How many people are still holding their feet to the fire now? No one.
Well, there's almost like 100 things going on at once with the Bud Light thing, which you're right. It is a pretty good like case study of everything. Cause I guess there was one part where, the principle, there's always kind of an argument between, hey, are we trying to win or are we trying to, have principles? Mm-hmm. And those things are almost always like go against each other. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like in any political movement, it's kind of like, are we trying to win? Then you're like, I mean, with political movements, it's always kind of like, that's why they get sort of hijacked by cynical actors always, because, there's always just a bunch of energy there. And then someone can take it and be like, well, I have some goal here. And then I guess, so I don't think anyone was specifically outraged with Bud Light as much as they're like, well, here's the poster child.
Yes.
And then I think there's like a rationalization where you can say well, they aren't going to realize what it's like unless we do it back to them. And, that can go on forever, but.
Yes. Yeah, I asked.
But you go, you're not a political actor. Like you're not running for office. You're not running a political movement. So you're like, why do I have to pretend I care?
Yes. Well, I asked.
And sorry to interrupt again. Your normal buddy. It's one thing you go, I get your thing. You have a whole channel like telling people how to vote or whatever. But your normal person being like, you don't get sucked in.
Yeah, you don't need to be complicit as a normal dude on the street. You have enough stuff to worry about. There's a fucking
Don't get sucked into their bullshit.
There's a hurricane outside. I asked Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO of Daily Wire, and I asked Shapiro this as well. And I was like, maybe similar to your following from the front thing. It's like a lot of what the platform of right-wing sort of commentary has been over the last 7 years or so, has very much been anti-woke. And that it's been like reactionary. Here is a crazy new flag that's got 55 different colors. And here is a person that got jailed for bird scootering over a crosswalk that was put down with the pride flag on it and all the rest of it. That very much was the position. But I think you're right. Over the last 5 years ago or so, the things that you couldn't say, largely now most people are saying. Most people I think we're past peak woke. We're very
that stuff's
it's kind of gone. But I was like, okay, so given that you guys have made so much of your platform off the back of this, are you worried that when most people probably agree with this
I think
position,
there'll always be a space for just being like a meat and potatoes conservative commentator. You know what I mean? I think you look at some of those guys where you're just like, well, what's that guy been, what, I don't know, like what's the guy, like, I think not him, but like the Rush Limbaugh, the Glenn Beck's of the world. You're like, oh yeah, remember that guy? You're like, remember that guy? He got 4 million viewers every morning for 7 hours.
Yeah. Over the span of about a year, I tried pretty much every green drink that I could find to try and work out which one was best. And I came across AG1 and have stuck with it for over 3 years because it is the best. It's the most comprehensive. It's the most highly tested. It's the most rigorously formulated of any green drink that exists. They genuinely care about holistic health, which is why I've got my mum to take it and my dad to take it and tons of my friends as well, and why I've put it inside of my body for over 3 years. And if I found anything that was better, I would switch. But I haven't, which is why I still use it. The formulation is built to improve your health, not just when you take it for 1 week, but when you use it every single day for years, and that is why I keep using it. If you're not sure, there's a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it and try it, and if you do not like it, they will give you your money back. Right now, you can get a year's free supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs, plus that 90-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. That's drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. Your new special taught me that, and I think this is right, companies are either getting in trouble at the moment for being too gay or not gay enough. That's the way that they exist. Too gay or not gay enough. Yeah,
there was a pretty good rip there where it was like companies were having a hard time finding the perfect amount of gay to be.
As I've found on that, I did a little bit of research. Toyota won't sponsor pride events following backlash from an anti-woke mob. So Pink News, which I think is like a gay website, in a memo sent to 50,000 US employees and more than 1,500 dealerships, the company said the decision follows a highly politicized discussion around business commitments to DEI, not supporting festivals and parades. According to Bloomberg, they're not participating in some other stuff and DEI and all of that. They're stopping all of that. Anyway, so I did a bit more digging, and it turns out that there's a lot of companies that are sort of quietly rolling back their DEI efforts. And Pink News has a big problem with this. But
I can't imagine Pink News loves it.
The choice of companies that they were getting outraged about rolling back their DEI efforts. This is the best list. So
is this the list of not gay enough?
Yeah, this is the list of was too gay for their customers, now not gay enough for Pink News, but they highlighted that they could have done it and they're in real shit. Okay, so this is a list of companies who have rolled back their DEI efforts because of right-wing pressure and are not providing an inclusive working environment. John Deere, the tractor manufacturer.
I saw the John Deere hustle bustle.
Jack Daniels, Harley Davidson, Ford, Lowe's, Molson Coors, and Stanley Black & Decker. I'm like, you couldn't have picked a list of less gay companies to be angry about the fact.
I think Harley Davidson was actually doing some stuff.
What were they doing?
I don't know exactly, but I think they were just a lot of it is kind of that there was a moment where, if you look at it like stocks, right? There was a moment where there was like an arbitrage opportunity where a lot of these companies were like, we can make money by pandering to this bullshit. It's an easy way to get clicks. The problem is if you stay in those waters for too long, before you know it, you have actual people in your company that believe it. Whereas like, at the top, you're just like, oh, this is what you do to get press or whatever. And they probably don't give two shits. And then, but if you're in that for 4 years, you have turnover nets, like now you have 35% of the people. And also you have to sell the bullshit to the company.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, guess what? Now they all believe it. So you can't, when it's no longer an arbitrage opportunity,
it's
and
no
you're
longer
like,
cool. You've got this like fucking.
There's no value in it, like monetarily for a company. Well, now what do you do? How do you back out of it?
It just blows my mind that those were this was like the vanguard of the issue of, we can't believe that these companies aren't supporting LGBTQ rights. I'm like, John Deere? Really? Is that the tip of the spear?
They probably had, a lot of these companies, I've seen this a lot in television. Like I've, worked in television a lot, where it's like, and especially you'll talk to, a lot of people that are higher up, and they're like, we're not about this life. But they kind of hired some hip new marketing team, and the marketing team's like, this is what you do. You post all this stuff. And they're kind of right at that time. They're like, if you want to get a lot of clicks. And now I think people have a little bit of a difference between like what's a good click and a bad click. You know what I mean? Whereas before you're like, hey, I did your ad campaign. It has 18 million views. And you go, well, if you look under it, you'll see that that's most people saying they hate us.
Well, I wonder if the Bud Light thing has kind of highlighted to companies that caving into pressure that they're then going to have to go back on. I think Gillette is still kind of out in the wings. I don't think.
Yeah, caving into pressure is being generous, because I would say it is like, being vultures trying to, be able to cash in on this like little energy that's in this social movement.
They're sort of predestining the
I don't think they're innocent in this.
Right. Yeah.
I think that it was like, we have people, and you're in this industry. I'm sure you see all the time where, like something is like a trend, and there's people that sort of like address the trend but stay themselves. And then there's certain people that are trying to like really cash it in, and you can see that.
I'm just waiting for Russia Today's $10 million check.
Yeah.
I'm still fucking dude. Tenet Media, where are you at? Come and pay me. I thought Lauren Chen had my number. But yeah, I spoke about this on the show a couple of weeks ago. We got this email through just the general contact form on my website that said, we want to pitch this person to come on the show, and we're willing to pay a 6-figure sum to bring them on. And the topics that we would like to discuss, and the fucking list of topics were all like oil prices in the Middle East. This is some Saudi deep state conspiracy bullshit. And it's funny, man.
That would, what that would be funny though, if you ever want to do it, is have those people on and then allow us to do like a prank show thing with them. Like have the people on that are paying $100,000, and they give them $100,000 back after, but like have them in and like prank them where we're not doing any of the stuff.
Have you been watching, who's that guy? No Cap on God?
Yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, fuck me. He is so good at what he does. I mean, you have this like on street thing. I can't do it. My cringe meter, my British cringe meter just goes through the roof. Even second.
It's very British.
It is. Thank you. It's very prim and proper. But it goes through the roof watching you do your thing. Where, what was it that you were walking through Times Square asking people to donate money to Trump's legal fund?
Oh, I had a while where I had a bunch of different like funds I was getting people to donate to. I tried to get I want to do one where I was like, did Alex Jones' legal fund, and I did Trump's legal fund, and then I did Tucker Carlson was making a doc, Hillary and Liberal Lies, and I was asking but the Trump one, I was telling people in New York, I said that they have a chance, they get entered into a raffle to win a chance to go to lunch with Barron Trump. And they're like, and she goes, I would never want to go to lunch with Barron Trump. I'm like, well, it's not a guarantee you're going to win. It's just it's so funny.
Yeah,
I think you're getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah, it's not guaranteed. Those on-street interviews are, for me, like I love watching them, but I can't deal with them. And the dude from No Cap on God, Lionel, I think is his name, is fucking sweet. Did you see that Trump had his own line of Bibles? Do you see this story?
Yeah. He's got a lot of fucking wacky stuff.
He's got it all.
The shoes, Bibles.
It turns out that Trump's "God Bless the USA" Bibles were made in China. The official Bibles of Donald Trump were printed in China, it has been revealed. Thousands of copies of his God Bless the USA Bible were printed in a country that the former president has repeatedly accused of stealing American jobs. Trump never said where they were printed or what they cost. A copy hand-signed by the former president sells for $1,000. So, yeah, look, maybe you could offer one of the signed Bibles as well.
Yeah,
you can probably guarantee that.
Dude, I've actually been talking about this on stage a bit, that it is funny to me that Fox News can't get good commercials, so they just have to sell junk to old people. And Rumble has that a little bit, but CNN's always like, McDonald's and the most multicultural family of all time just enjoying a bag of Doritos. That's in combos you don't even see, like Asian guy, black woman, Indian son. No stereotypes in this house. The Asian and the woman are both really good drivers. Just shit you never see, right? And then you go to Fox News, they're like, "Rise up, patriots! This is a shrapnel of 9/11 that is made into a bucket of Trump's cum." But this is a scab off Ronald Reagan's arm when he was. But it's just like there was one where, oh, this is what it was. This is what made me start. I can't remember if it was Rumble or Fox or whatever, but I was watching something and it started out, the ad just pops up and I actually burst out laughing where it goes, "Sleepy Joe doesn't want you to see this." And it's like a coin or something. Just out of the blue, "Sleepy Joe doesn't want you to see this." I was dying. That's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
That is good. You are right. The like right-wing adverts versus left-wing adverts. Have you done a sketch? You must have done
a sketch a while ago, and they did. Then like a lot of the things have happened because I said they were selling Patriot water.
Oh, yeah, there is actually, what's it called? Like Patriot 2.0 or some shit?
Yeah,
like
just the only thing they haven't done is Patriot Air, where it's like air for Patriot.
Yeah. There's no immigrants have breathed this air in.
Yeah, it's a good air.
Fucking hell. The other thing from your special that we need to talk about, you taught me that there is a YouTube niche of breastfeeding advice. And I didn't even know that this was a thing. I mean, I guess that you need advice for everything.
I wish I didn't know it was a thing, buddy. I hope you're not in the situation I am, because the problem with the algorithms, and I've been saying this with, I got on disability TikTok, right? Which is, what do you jerk off to? So there's this guy, he just like rolls around. He's got no arms and legs, and there's like a bunch of them, right? And this guy's, you're laughing. The guy's crushing. He's probably a bazillionaire right now. This guy rolling into a bag of money, right? But the thing is, the algorithm, it's so wild because you don't ask for it, but if you were walking around the street and there was a guy rolling around on this floor or like taking a shit in the alley, like, of course you would look more than you would just look at a normal person. And then the algorithm's like, "Oh, that's your shit, huh?" So it's like, that's all you get now. So if you walk, so now when I see any freak show content, I try to scroll as fast as I can.
Okay.
But I guess they got me with the breastfeeding. Because they kept dude, it's a literal, OnlyFans chick just sitting there, fake baby. Oh, I don't know if I didn't mention that part in the special. They got fake babies too. So basically it's a loophole that you can be nude on Instagram if it's breastfeeding content.
Okay, even if it's not a real child.
Well, I don't know the logistics of the real or fake child, because maybe you could say it's it's educational.
Practicing, it's a practice child.
Yeah, and and they say it's for new mothers. That's why on my special, I'm just like, yeah, it's 10,000 new mothers. That's who's watching this. But so they have basically fake babies now, and then they're feeding this to me, man. I'm the demo. That I don't watch it anymore. They keep giving it to me. They're like, "You did that one time, though. You love it."
Well, it's funny to work out whether or not it was like them activating a secret thing that you actually did want in the back of your mind.
What, tits?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, fucking zany me. If I'm seeing a full out pair of tits on my timeline, I scroll a little slower. Fucking wacko.
I remember reading the TikTok terms of service thing that was in some news article, and they were talking about how the app is allowed to use the front-facing camera to detect micro expressions.
How would it?
They must have mapped the way that your face moves, and then it's watching you looking, and you see some of the breastfeeding content.
Oh, so if you go like that?
Well, yeah, but that's a reaction, right? So maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I'm sure they've
What's the micro?
the micro expression to fake breastfeeding porn, real breastfeeding porn to a fake baby, I guess, technically.
I mean, yeah, whatever. You hacked the system. You figured out how to be nude on the internet to get people to subscribe to your things and get views. It's probably good, but yeah, the problem is now the algorithm is just the whole thing's based on, did you look at it for longer than you looked at the last thing?
This is now your thing. Hey, guess what? This is your entire identity.
Yeah, and well, that's, it's one thing to be like, you tricked me into having an algorithm full of boobs. It's a whole nother thing to be like, you tricked me into having a whole algorithm full of like guys whose faces are burned off.
Right, or rolling around, quadriplegics rolling around in bags of money. You know what?
I tried to hack my algorithm where I went and just, so my Facebook and my Boys Cast page, so I only scroll through those. And I loaded my thing up and I watched like only horse hoof tutorials. So now
thinks you're a rancher.
Yeah.
And what are you still getting delivered all of the
That's the majority of what I get now. I have like favorite hoof guys now and stuff like that. Like I literally like watch hoof content of a guy just cleaning off and I'll be like, guy's missing a spot. Like Nate the hoof guy would never miss that.
Yeah, exactly. He's nowhere near as good as Dry Creek Dwayne.
And then I got into horseshoes too. So I got horses, cows' hoofs. So that's all I get right now. And actually, life's been better.
Right. Ever since I pivoted from watching breastfeeding content to horse hoof cleaning content, everything's gone right. So I wanted to teach you about this book that I read a couple of years ago. The #1 Google search in India that starts with the sentence, "My husband wants ... is my husband wants me to breastfeed him." So porn featuring adult breastfeeding is higher in India than anywhere else in the world.
Why is that?
In just about every country, nearly all Google searches looking for advice on breastfeeding is how to breastfeed a baby. In India, Google searches looking for breastfeeding advice are equally split between how to breastfeed a baby and how to breastfeed your husband.
So, I mean, it has to be. I know a guy who's into this. Have you met my buddy JJ? You met JJ? Yeah, exactly.
Is he Indian?
No,
he should be.
Yeah. But they have some messed up thing. He's got a overbearing Jewish mother. They freaking messed him up, right?
That he's got a fucking Oedipus complex about.
So Indian dudes, I grew up in like right around Toronto, which is like huge Indian population. So a lot of people where I grew up with are Indian. I got relatives that are Indian, and they do have a culture of a bit of an overbearing mother, I think. So India, especially like the boys are very like the golden child to the mom. So, to some degree,
going to be babied later in life as well.
It's got to be related to, obviously that has something to do with mom shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's something to do with, like, I think Indian people have that same like overbearing Jewish mother, like an overbearing Indian mother.
I wonder why it's not. I don't know how much sort of Jew
and the dad, you're always
breastfeeding-
going to get hurt real bad.
I don't know how much Jew breastfeeding porn there is. Definitely not between the hours of whatever it is, 6 p.m. on a Friday. So this HuffPost person that was doing this.
Well, then you know why the Jewish people do it?
Why?
Well, because milk's free.
You're awful.
You're
awful. So this HuffPost person put a search in, searched "my husband wants me." Top searches that came up: my husband wants me to breastfeed him. My husband wants me to abort our first baby. My husband wants me to sleep with other men. My husband wants me to quit. My husband wants me to quit my job. And then a conservative person did it at HuffPost. My husband wants divorce, breast milk, oral all the time, me to breastfeed him. Like, this breastfeeding. I mean, oral all the
time's not that crazy, I guess.
But that came in as like third.
Yeah.
After divorce and breast milk. It didn't even appear for the liberal person either.
What's your theory as to why?
I don't know. The Indian thing's really. I wondered whether it was maybe something to do with the sacredness.
You're from London. London's super high Indian population. Similar.
Yeah. The whole UK is pretty high sort of subcontinental stuff. But I wondered whether it was something to do with like cows, cow milk, the sacredness of cows.
Saying their mom's fat.
No. I thought it might be.
You think it's the sacredness of cows? No, that's not it.
No, evidently not. No, you've got to have a more sophisticated fucking thought process. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Ask JJ. I'm sure he might be.
I'm telling you, it's messed up mother stuff.
Okay, and what's it? All of India, overbearing mothers just across the entire country.
Well, not every. I mean, a lot of Indians, so I don't know if all of them are on the breastfeeding searches.
Well, it's an equal.
I'll tell you another thing. Okay, this is my other theory. That's like, how that's like being into feet, like one above that in a sense where it's like it's not, maybe I'm not that crazy yet. You know what I mean? In their mind, they're like, this is like, I'm fucking this kinky dude, but it's you haven't fully crossed over into, you know, the craziest stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is like
it's not dead animal necrophilia.
Yeah, maybe that's one of those things where it's like India's getting into breastfeeding stuff, and you're just like, oh yeah, that was America 25 years ago.
Are you saying that it's a gateway drug?
That's my hypothesis.
Breastfeeding porn is a gateway drug into much more hardcore.
Yeah, this might be like a transitional period. You check in on India 7 years from now. You're like, that's not even in the top. It's not even cracking the top 20.
It's like when they look at chimpanzees and stuff, and they say it seems like chimpanzees are beginning to first use tools, and it's like, oh my god, I'm watching them evolve in front of my eyes. And it's the same thing, but with like degenerate porn for Indian people.
Yeah, exactly. This might be a transitionary step, but I think it's also a transitionary step because of the mother stuff.
Right. I wonder what we're going to see in a few decades' time, and we're going to be like sedimentary rock. We can just track the Pornhub searches of all of the like everybody across the world and see who's out front. That being said, Japanese men have recently become obsessed with tickling porn. More than 10% of Pornhub searches for young Japanese men are for tickling.
That one I really don't have I don't know Japanese guys. I know Indian people pretty well. I don't know the Japanese as well.
They want to be tickled.
So
that's all you need to know.
I mean, if I was to guess, this is completely out of nowhere.
What, you're saying that this isn't a well-researched opinion that you're about to put in front of us?
I feel like
backed
my
by
Indian
data?
stuff's on the money.
Okay.
I feel like I'm tapped into the Indian culture.
Okay.
Japanese stuff, my guess would be that Japanese culture is very childlike. You know, if you look at all the, you know, they have the girls where it's hot and they're basically like dressed like, you know,
schoolgirls.
You know, it's schoolgirls, like
shit.
the anime kids stuff. So if you think of, you know, that stuff being very popular.
Oh, it's like babying.
Tickling is very cartoony.
I think you might be onto something there. That wasn't total dog shit. That was...
Yeah, that has to... if I was to make a connection between two things, it's the childlike, you know, fashion stuff versus... you know, that stuff, you know, you do change your, you know, like, you ever watch like a movie about like, you know, like a place that's all not white people, and, you know, whether that be like Asian or, you know, and then you leave that, like, let's say you watched a whole thing about fucking Jamaica or something, you leave that kind of being like, I think I'm into black girls. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it does change whatever you're around obviously changes. Like
you're saying that you've got this like proximity like impact on what you're attracted to.
Well, that's for sure true. It's just the extent of which each person, it's, you know, that's just a nature nurture conversation, right? And for every person, that's whatever percentage. But what chicks are into is for sure nature nurture. There's got to be a split, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, you can't be into something.
So if you're always just, you know, surrounded by like all of the imagery of hot chicks is them being like, you know,
yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Then you're just like, oh yeah, like,
well, that's this
shit.
That's the same thing about are you finding something that you're genuinely interested in from the algorithm, or is it training you to be interested in what it wants you to click on?
I know, and this is kind of you know, the very negative parts about all of like algorithmic based, you know, art form. I mean, it's moving closer to, you know, no property law, China kind of thing. But the more important thing is that isn't a metric. So if you were a company, and I mean, you're a company, and if you said, okay, I did this thing, if you made a video and it got more views, right? And people watched it more, but most of them hated it, and no one, you know, signed up for your stuff. No one's, you know, you would consider that, well, let's not move in that direction. Like, views is not your only metric. Their main metric is how long you watched it. Again, if I'm walking by and a guy is shitting on the street, I will probably look at that longer than a guy who's sitting in a chair doing nothing. I didn't prefer that. So that is inaccurate. And I'll tell you where it leads to is because I just stopped using the apps like that. Okay, so TikTok's the most like that. And I know everyone, you know, the joke everyone always makes is you go, I actually don't like that. And you go, sure, bud, it's based, you know, the algorithm knows you better than you do. It's like, well, sure. The same way that you go, if I was sitting in my house and every day there was like the best food in the world or something healthy, you know, or the best tasting food or something healthy, or the hottest girl, or, you know, someone that you're not going to get in trouble for sleeping with, you know, every day, you would still want to make those, eventually you would stop going to that room. You would stop going to that party, like, you know, the same reason. So eventually I just kind of stop using the apps that I go, I don't like this more.
Yep.
You go, yeah, technically you're like good at like keeping me here longer, but that doesn't mean I like it more.
So there's
It's like shows that, here's a perfect example. Sorry to ramble on about this, but I stopped watching shows that force, there was shows used to be kind of episodic, and then they realized, when it went to the streaming model, that we need to end everything with like a huge cliffhanger to keep you involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
I stopped watching shows like that. So I won't watch shows that are episodic because I like can't go to sleep if I'm watching and it's like I need to watch more episodes. It's like, yeah, but then I won't do it the next day.
Right.
So
you can watch the entire thing to the series finale before you go to bed.
Yeah, you beat me in the short term.
Yeah.
But not in the long term. In the long term, I just exited the game.
Yeah. That's funny. In other news, this episode is brought to you by True Classic. True Classic tees have some of the highest quality t-shirts, hoodies, and jeans on the market without a premium price tag. The shirts fit incredibly well. They've got this awesome cotton elastane blend. They're loose around your midsection, but they're fitted around your arms and your chest. As the weather starts to dip, their long-sleeved Henleys and waffle hoodies are perfect for layering in comfort. They've got over 4 million customers and 200,000 reviews backing them up, so you can rest assured that you are choosing quality. And best of all, they've got a 100-day guarantee. So if it's not right, or if it wears a little too soon, they'll replace it for free. No questions asked. Right now, you can save when you bundle multiple items together by going to the link in the description below or heading to trueclassic.com/modernwisdom. That's trueclassic.com/modernwisdom. So there's a law called Goodhart's law. Parkinson's law is work expands to fill the time given for it. It's why you hand your university assignment in the morning that it's supposed to be due in.
Yeah, that's very true.
Just keeps on expanding. But there's one that's kind of similar called Goodhart's law. Goodhart's law says when a measure becomes an outcome, it ceases to be a good measure. So for instance, if you were to say the measure that I want is the most number of email newsletter subscribers that I could get, and that is the only thing I'm optimizing for, that's the outcome, a measure, email newsletter subscribers becomes the outcome that you optimize for. You would say, right, I'm going to post online that I'm going to give $10,000 to every person that signs up for my newsletter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then they don't get $10,000. What have you done? Hooray, you've got all of these people to sign up for your newsletter. But that wasn't actually the outcome you wanted. It was just a measure en route to it. The outcome you wanted was, I want a large list of people who are interested in what I do and want to hear from me and think about me positively and so on and so forth. And that's the same with talking about the content thing or the views thing or the optimizing for anything thing. It's the same as I want girls to like me, therefore I'm going to get as jacked as possible. You get super duper jacked, but you don't realize what the externality of that is going to be, which is just tons of fucking attention from men. Or if you owned a company, if you owned a company that was...
I never found getting jacked helped at all one way or another with women.
With getting men?
I don't... Oh. Yeah, with getting men, it did okay, yeah.
No, I think you'd be surprised at how little of a difference it makes.
It might have been adverse for me. Yeah.
How jacked have you got?
I think if I had a six-pack, I think the knowledge that, it sounds like a cope, but I mean, obviously it's different types of girls, but like I played in, bands my whole life and I've been in entertainment my whole life and been a touring comedian for 15 years. And I would say that the people that are around that scene, like I've never seen a correlation between the most jacked guy and the most girls, like, to a point, but I think that there's like a level of like cool, nihilism that is negated by having a six-pack.
Oh, that's funny. I wonder how special that is to your particular industries of like Lothario.
It depends on your shtick, yeah.
Fucking leather jacket wearing 4 a.m. people.
I probably, especially depends on your body type too, but I think that like the skinny heroin version of my body types is more appealing than the jacked version to women.
You texted me something about that the other week. I was fucking pissing myself. But that Goodhart's law thing. So imagine that you run a company and one of the measures that you want, you tell, we need to drop the fraud rate in our company as much as possible. So you get customer support and you drill them. This is the most important metric. This is exactly what you're focusing on. Hooray, they managed to drive the fraud rate to essentially zero. Boo. What they actually do is treat every customer like a potential fraudster. That's not good. That's not actually what you wanted to achieve. So I think when you're looking at stuff like the pooping man on the street that you look at for a little bit longer, the equivalent of that on the internet, what you actually end up realizing is, okay, I can make something that will cause people to look and may even accumulate an audience, but it's not the sort of audience that I want. What are they here for? Are they here for like the right reasons? What are their expectations around me? This is one of the things that you should always be scared about if you ever do anything that blows up, even as a musician. Like, let's say that you make a song and this song's amazing, but it's like kind of a bit out there compared with what your usual stuff is and what you love to make, and you just experimented and had this crack, and you go, I've just got 50%. Now. That's you now. That's you. And you go, oh, fuck, I need to now play in that field. I made a like right-wing country, that Oliver Anthony guy, remember that guy?
Yeah.
Like, guess what? You're now like a political football for the rest of your music career.
Yeah.
Like, everybody cares about you and what you think to do with DC and the rich man north of Richmond and blah, blah. You go, that might have just been, I don't think it was, but that might have just been one. He was like, I'm just going to have a crack. I'll write a thing that's about like rich men that are kind of in the Washington, DC area. And you go, that's you now. That's your entire identity. So be careful doing that.
1000%. I think the hardest part is like when you're trying to explain to other people your version of it, because you know when you're trying to like have employees or whatever, anyone else that's like working for you, it's like because you're basically describing an equation that's like this if this, right? You're saying like if these you could probably know the better wording for it, but if these criteria are satisfied, then this is the thing we're optimizing for, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's I feel like that's a very hard thing to like get people on board with.
I had this
like I mean a big huge thing that probably the and you can have a million of them, but the big thing I always have that it's like none of this matters if it isn't funny, right? So I'm always like, and it's like, well, you said you want this and this and this, and it was like, yeah, none of that is. We don't even have any of those conversations like until it's funny.
Yep.
So it didn't. Yeah. So it's like having conversations like doing things in the right order. Maybe is the answer.
Well, having a gate that you have to pass through. So if it,
they're like
if this isn't funny, doesn't matter how much money it makes, doesn't matter how much impact it has, doesn't matter how
irrelevant.
Cool it makes me. If it's not funny, it doesn't get through the first. So there's a like an ordinating principle. Kind of similar, Jeff Bezos and Musk supposedly have got one. Bezos' at Amazon was, does this make the customer experience better? And Musk's was, does this get us closer to Mars? So everything, all of the choices, it doesn't matter how fucking cool it is, it doesn't matter how fast the Tesla is, it doesn't matter how much money it makes on Amazon Prime Day or Black Friday or whatever. Does this make the customer experience better? Does this get us closer to Mars? And if it doesn't get through that, is this funny? If it's not funny, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the base level of like.
But it makes everything easier.
And I think that's why on stage it's easy because you're like, well, obviously if it's not getting laughs, like
kill it.
Well, maybe not kill it, get it to the point where it's getting laughs, but you go, no matter how good I think this is, doesn't matter until that's solved.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it easier.
If you think it's impactful, if you think that it's like useful, if you think that it's cool for your career, if you think it's going to make headlines, if it's not funny, it doesn't get.
I mean, it's like one of those things where it's like working in a magazine and you're kind of like we have this amazing scoop, but it's about the boss's wife. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. They're not going to say yes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, good.
You go, no, you don't understand how great this is. It was like it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but it's hard to.
I had this conversation with a guy called Stuart Russell who wrote this book, Human Compatible. So the worldwide textbook on AI may still be the case, but it certainly was for a couple of decades. It was written by this guy, Stuart Russell. Anyway, wrote this book. And in it, he taught me this really interesting thing about how the algorithm works. So the algorithm works in two ways. First way is that it finds content that you are likely to click on by getting better at predicting what you're going to click on. Right? That's kind of the way that everybody understands that the algorithm works. But there's a second way that it works as well, which is it moves your preferences, it nudges your preferences to make you easier to predict. So it's a bi-directional relationship.
Oh, that's sinister.
Fuck, you've really sinister. Yeah, that's a great word. And yeah, so one of the reasons that we talk here, why is the internet
People hate unpredictability.
But the internet's so like polarized, and these two camps don't talk to each other, and all the rest of it. And you go, okay, like maybe that's because of tribalism. Maybe it's because you're stating your opinions to everybody all the time. Maybe it's because we don't have time to have nuanced opinions, and there's these sort of shows of loyalty to your own side and threat displays to the other. Or maybe it's the algorithm, meaning that if I know you're far right, you're always going to hate click or love click on these two buckets of things. And if you're far left, you're going to do the opposite. Maybe everybody is just being cucked by the algo, and we've all been turned into these sort of easily predictable like preference engines.
Yeah, but I always think of things a little bit like, you know, stocks is, or maybe just everything is stocks, but it's the only one that is, you know, there's a centralized body which describes everything. But it really does, though. The more they do it, the more there is that arbitrage opportunity where they're, because like in, you know, attraction or whatever, it's like, you know, there's the kind of the oldest men-women thing, but women aren't attracted to a man who they can predict everything about him, you know? And so it's like people think they want that, but then they kind of stop wanting it. So at a time when everything kind of becomes predictable, when you see something that wasn't, you know, in a lot of ways, it's so much more attractive. But then, yeah, so you kind of like, how do you rise above the algorithms to be that?
There's a tension between sort of novelty or being exotic and being reliable and consistent. Because people like that. I think this is one of the reasons, again, I listened to tons of Shapiro during 2020, during COVID. If there's a global pandemic going on, you need a daily show, I chose him. I know I can just read the title. I've got a pretty good idea of what his take's going to be. It's like putting on an old leather pair of shoes. Yeah. You know, there's a cadence.
Well, I watch the cop shows like NCIS and stuff like that.
You know, it's the fucking brother, it's the uncle, it's the guy that was like sort of snooping around the corner at the start and asking too many questions. You know what it's going to be, but you're almost there for that. It's comfortable log fire. You've got your fucking slippers on. Like, I'm familiar with this. And I think that the tension that people have between this desire for reliability and consistency and predictability, but avoiding being boring, and also the sort of spice of novelty and newness that everybody wants, finding that is exactly what it is. But I mean, how many times have you been on the algo and it's just thrown you something you've never seen before, and you're like, oh, that's fucking good. So I went down a rabbit hole of Star Wars
the meme. If you're in the meme culture, there's a lot of, you know, it'll get you.
Dude, I went down this huge rabbit hole of Star Wars character battle power like analysis. People that had read all of the lore and they know who the most powerful Sith is of all time, and they work out what would have happened if Luke Skywalker at peak power had actually fought this guy and all the rest of it. And then that led me into this one about Marvel Comics and all of the Marvel Comics, and this is the biggest, most powerful guy, and it's that same fucking black man AI voice that everybody uses.
Yeah.
And I was like, this, and I was enthralled. But that was one video I'd never seen before. So that was the, you know, a bit of novelty that just gets tossed at you, and you're like, oh wow, like this is fucking sweet. And then other times you go, okay, if I had that all the time, it'd be too chaotic. It's like cat video, breastfeeding video, cow video, fucking Marvel video, too much.
There has to be, you know what, this would be the opportunity for the company, that you basically are like algorithm curators. Because, you know, especially like in what you do, where you go, you know, there's people that are like, yeah, I know that this is worse for me, so I'm choosing to sort of, you know, it's obviously you don't want to just be like using your willpower every second, right? So you're able to say, okay, this is someone, they take over your account for a week, and then they give it back to you where you're like, this is like the success algorithm you're about to get. I was saying that I don't get, you know, I never get messed up by politics shit. Like it never really like gets to me. But the alpha male shit sometimes, where it's like, if you sleep, you're gay, and I'll be like, what the, you know, like,
dude, it's so.
I will just be like on a plane, and you know, a guy's just like, you know, y'all sleeping, you know, they're sleeping while I'm working content, and I'm just like, fucking loser. It's just yelling at me. Can I tell you one thing?
Yes.
My buddy, I know a guy that he filmed with Jordan Peterson. I know you know Jordan, and he goes, he was like the camera guy, and it was and he was like doing like a rant, and he said he like honestly went home stressed out because it was just. He was holding like, just right here, right? Well, Jordan Peterson's like, and another thing, bucko. He goes, I went to work, I just got yelled at by Jordan Peterson for 3 hours. He said it was like he had to shake it off, like just the camera guy.
Oh my god!
It's
yeah,
funny.
I have no idea how people that have to put up with that sort of stuff. There was a dude that worked for us, Bennett, my DP. The camera op didn't show for the Jocko Willink episode that we did a few years ago, and he was. I mean, Jocko's got he's a man with a large head. And this shot was zoomed like just that.
Sure.
So it was just his eyes and his nose.
Yeah.
And this guy for 3 hours, Bennett, had just been looking down the lens of the camera like this, like tracking his head as he'd moved around. And he was like, dude, I just like stared at a guy that's killed people's eyes for 3.5 hours.
Was getting my soul.
Yeah. I know he wasn't looking at me, but it kind of felt like it.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Okay, we got to talk a bit of politics. Like what the fuck is the assessment you've got? This isn't your first time in the US during an election. Like, is this more crazy than it is typically? It's my first time here.
This is your first time being here for it?
Yep.
Feels less crazy to me.
Really?
Does it feel more crazy to you?
Well, I haven't been here before.
But you've been, I mean, everyone's inundated by American politics.
Paid attention. I don't know, man. I mean, from 2 assassination attempts to a replaced candidate to like one of them going on Call Her Daddy. Like, I mean, it's all happening.
Have you seen Danny's the AI king right now?
Bro. So for the people that don't know, I had to text Danny about this. I also sent it to the guy that did Alex's $125 million Sirius XM deal. And I was like, bro, have you seen this?
Yeah.
Danny did a Kamala and Alex AI
talk
over and makes like a script that the AI must read in their voice. And he was talking about, Kamala, everybody knows that you're the throat goat. So can we talk? Unreal.
I mean, if you're 70 years old and you just watch a video and you're supposed to know it's AI, like you're cooked, man. You know, you're done.
Yep.
But yeah, in terms of to me, it feels like I mean, the last 4 elections. Okay, I remember I was in. I guess we'll see who wins and how it shakes down. I remember being in Toronto when Trump won the first time, and I was at a comedy club, and girls were crying. Like girls were like bawling their eyes out, and I remember I went on
Canadian
stage.
girls.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, American politics is everywhere. So you are. Yes, it's funny that it is in Canada, but I guess it doesn't feel like that. They feel like, you know, and I'm sure they were correct that like Trump being president is going to affect the next 4 years of their life or whatever. But yeah, that's how much, you know, and I know people in New York that were like, yeah, I cried, and they kind of feel like a little embarrassed about it now. But I remember I went on stage and I was like, it's 2016, and I was like, there's going to be some fucking changes around here. Now, I said that, like the first thing that happened. But it was like, yeah, it was crazy. People were crying, right? But to me, it doesn't feel like it feels to some degree like a lot of people are in some ways embarrassed about how much they lost their mind, you know, and people lost their mind so many times where now it feels, you know, back to probably a little closer to how I grew up, where, you know, people are like, yeah, you know, there's podcasts with people that have different political views. It seems to me like both candidates are sort of, you know, Trump's going on being like, no, I'm not crazy on abortion. And then Kamala's going on being like, I swear I'm not like this fucking crazy woke person. Like they're almost, you know, they're clearly sort of, whether they're going to do it or not, but they're clearly like, that's who they're trying to sort of, you know, move into. Again, we'll see what happens afterwards. But I was kind of thinking that so many of arguments right now is just, you know, abortion would be an example, but you can probably, you know, pick anything. Most arguments in politics are just who has the more egregious edge case. You know what I mean? So it's like, and most of the time, 90%, 99.9% of the time, you're not talking about edge cases, but it's really being like, here's this edge case of what happens if you get your way. And then this guy goes, well, here's an edge case of what happens the other way.
Yeah, okay. One person's like immigrant that's killed an entire family of 5 is another person's 3rd trimester dead baby that's actually been 5 hours born or some shit.
And in reality, none of it, you know, most of it, almost never any of it happens, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure whatever people are probably arguing like, well, this one happens a lot, and maybe there are edge cases of what I'm saying.
Well, if it's a true edge case, then it doesn't happen a lot. That's what the definition of an edge
by
case.
definitions.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
But yeah, so to me, it was like every argument I watch right now, it feels like it's like, how can you prepare the most egregious edge case?
It's just nut picking from left to right. Yeah.
Well, and I think why it's gone a little more politically, like if you watch like the debates with the VP debates, right? And I kind of watch this stuff because we talk about it a bit. Mm-hmm. But like to me, that was your classic vintage, you know, I was going to say like, you know, the politics we're used to now is just like, these guys are going on being like, he has a pretty good idea. I actually agree with him on that one. It's a pretty good idea. And I'm like, call him fat. What are you? What is like? Call him a rapist. What do we want? I came in for like that's what me and Danny were saying. That you just have a flashback where you go, wait, am I just watching a VP debate? What the hell?
I came here for a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I thought I was watching politics, not politics. We were saying the same thing about conspiracy theories, where sometimes you get it too deep into conspiracy theories. Like I was watching all the P-Diddy stuff and watching all this stuff, and you're like, it's an Epstein sex trafficking ring, and then eventually you're just like, so J-Lo is leaving Ben Affleck, and she's not happy. And you go, RFK's wife was seen without her wedding ring, and before you know, you're just gossiping. And you're like, what are you talking about? RFK's wife leaving you? I'm doing conspiracies right now.
Right, it's been so watered down that everything is now
you
a
get
part
too
of
deep
that.
into like those kind of conspiracies. You're just doing.
How much do you think the Kamala going on podcast and doing the 60 minutes and all the rest of it is just a response to the fact that Trump is everywhere at the moment? Do you think that's them playing defense, just sort of trying to get her out there because it's too obvious? If she doesn't go on all of this any long form stuff at all, there's this big sort of open loop of.
I think it was too obvious, and they were like, "Well, let's crank out a few, softballs like Stern. Stern's gonna be like, what's it like being so great, So I think that's what they're doing. They're like, yeah, let's crank out a few. And then I think that people just don't like her. So it seems to be that it's kind of changing the things. I'm sure it's not changing a lot, but I mean, the betting markets are not feeling her interviews.
Dude, do you follow Polymarket?
Yeah, I love following Polymarket.
All right. So everyone, I had Mike Solana from Pirate Wires on the show a couple of months ago. He's so fucking great. They wrote this thing today I wanted to read to you. So they're sponsored by Polymarket, right? They're like a partner.
Okay.
I'm not a partner with Polymarket. This is not an ad, but this is one of the best ad reads that I've ever read. So, Tuah Hawk Tuah. As Donald Trump continues his campaign tour podcast circuit ahead of next month's presidential election, Polymarket gives a 4% chance that he'll eventually join the Hawk Tuah girl on her new Talk Tour show. While those odds have gone down, no pun intended, from a high of 10% earlier this week, there's still a non-zero chance the Don Hawk collab happening, meaning a few bettors with real stake in the game still believe DJT may sit down with the influencer, grab the mic and spit on that thing for an hour or so. Let this be a lesson, folks. If someone comes up to you on the street asking invasive sex questions, don't be so quick to brush them off. You might just end up interviewing a president. I fucking loved that ad read. I thought that was so fucking
that's funny.
Tuah Hawk Tuah. But yeah,
I mean that is right now I've been kind of making that joke. I was actually going to do a sketch about this. I never did, but the idea of like every girl now, answering a street question, being like, actually, you know what? Can I do that again? Bring it in. I think I can do that better. Like just every girl trying to be the biggest hoe because that's how they get famous. I think Lieutenant Dan, the hurricane guy, he's going to be the new Hawk Tuah guy. That guy's going to have
So all right,
he's going to be interviewing the president.
For the people that don't know, who's Lieutenant Dan?
He's like a guy that been going viral during the hurricane stuff. And he lives in a boat, I guess, or something like that.
Because he refuses to leave during a Category 5 hurricane.
But yeah, so I guess that there obviously she couldn't do no interviews. So yeah, she had to do a few
at some point. It's funny that you say about that, like retrospective shame, PTSD, post-traumatic shame disorder of.
You must know people have that.
A little bit, but I don't know, because 2016, I still really, really had my head up my ass. So was not paying much attention to what was going on politically. But I can totally see how that would be the case. There's another element as well, I think, where
just people that were like mad crazy during COVID.
Yes, that's true. That would be more accurate, that one. But with the Trump thing, I think there's a bit where people don't want to admit that he gets to them. Like everybody knows his shtick largely now. He did this bit the other day where someone was like, gays for Trump, and he said, who said that? Some guy was like, it's me over here, and he went, you don't look gay. Like, you just know that what he's gonna say. He called Alex Cooper like dumb. She's a dummy. Like, he's a dumb girl. She's a dummy. And you're like,
there's like fair criticisms, and then there's like your brain's gone. Like, I can get like a normal person being like, yo, I don't want to like live in a world that like revolves around one man again for 4 years, where it's just like the whole world like revolves around this one guy. Like, that's fair to say, and I think some people think that. So, I mean, probably a referendum on, whether people want Trump again. And then out of the people that are like, we don't, being like, is this too much? Is she going to be that bad?
Yeah.
Like people saying that.
We'll get back to talking to Ryan in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Function. You probably want to know what's happening inside of your body, but getting your blood work comprehensively analyzed can cost thousands, which is why I partnered with Function. For just $500, you receive extensive lab work on over 100 carefully selected biomarkers, giving you insights into your hormone profile, cardiovascular health, organ function, and much more. Their team of expert physicians will then analyze the data and give you actionable advice to improve your health and lifespan. Monitoring things like your testosterone can make a massive difference to your energy, performance, and happiness, and being able to see that data charted out over the course of a year with actionable insights to actually improve them is exactly what you get with Function. Dr. Andrew Huberman is their scientific advisor and Dr. Mark Hyman is their chief medical officer, so you can trust that the data and insights you receive are scientifically sound and reliable. Right now, you can discover where your health stands and take action with Function's expert health assessments by going to the link in the description below or heading to functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. Isn't it interesting that the press are pushing so hard against Trump? The Atlantic came out in support of Kamala.
Oh, wait, the media was against Trump, you're saying? I didn't catch it. Which one?
But like the single greatest thing that could happen to all of the clicks of every single news
they're
outlet
bathing in clicks for
on the planet would be 4 years of a Trump presidency.
Sort of, but again, it's the short-term thing again. Like, think about how did that end? All of those places that you go, this was a click bonanza. How are they doing now? Are they doing better or worse than they were doing before that?
Keep him in power.
Well, but that's what I mean. It's kind of, I mean, I was having trouble sleeping and I started taking sleeping pills. And it was like, well, now I have to take sleeping pills.
Right, okay. But I mean, well,
but like, it feels like that a little bit where you go, yeah, that'll be a click bonanza, but I think you have to like, but you're going to ruin your brand in the process.
I wonder whether...
And literally, dude, they lost their minds so much and tried to like ring out every click for Trump that it killed media.
That's true. That is true.
Legitimately,
It expedited the death of mainstream media.
It's not a job anymore because they've lost their minds so much during Trump.
That's a good point.
Have you seen the New York Times were striking, right?
No.
And so the New York Times was going on strike, and they basically they had their demands, and it was like, imagine what you would think they would be. It was like, we need, like rooms if we're feeling microaggressions. The one thing was they go, we need trigger warnings, and like shit that you're like, this, you're kidding, right? And it was like, they want trigger warnings at the news. Like they work in the news. They need trigger warnings, right? But it was just funny because the same day that came out was the thing where Wall Street was like, we're only going to let people work 82 hours a week. It's like so funny. The like
right
dichotomy of
within
like,
the space of like 3 miles of each other.
Media. Yeah. Traditional like fucking liberal New York media versus,
ruthless capitalists
versus just like, yeah, dude, bro, fucking capitalists. And it was like, they're making a rule that they're only allowed to work 82 hours a week on paper. I mean, no one's going to follow it, but
yeah, you're limited to 3 grams of cocaine per day in the office on account. Yeah. So this, the Atlantic thing, the Atlantic for the 5th time in its history is endorsing a candidate for president, Kamala Harris. But another way to write it is the
huge endorsement. People were waiting on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, they wrote an article when, was it Scientific American came out in support of Kamala? They literally wrote an article saying Scientific American didn't need to endorse anybody. And then a month later, obviously, whatever pressure has been applied to them that they need to come out. Come on, we really need your support.
So they have is it the reason they have a big subscription model and their base is like, hey, we're paying you money, or are you going to say something or what?
Maybe. I get the sense that it would have come more from inside of the company than inside of the audience.
Gotcha.
But another way to write it, 5th time in the history endorsing a presidential candidate, or 3rd time in a row they're endorsing Trump's opponent.
Yeah,
so it's like, it's not the whole, everything that's happening with regards to politics at the moment is just a big fuck off protest vote. You're not voting for the love of that candidate. You're voting for hate of the other one.
You said that, you were in COVID, you go to Ben Shapiro and you're that comfort, and that's what it is. I mean, that's how I look at news, where I'm like, okay, sometimes I like to look at it to see what the thing that people want you to think is. You know what I mean?
right? So
like those publications, yeah.
it's not telling you what's going on. It's telling you what people want you to think is going on.
Which I think is, especially if you're someone that's, a comedian or in culture or any business where you need to know like the way things are moving or, probably you want to know those things, but that's the only information that you get generally. Or if they corroborate something that everyone else seems to corroborate, it's maybe another piece of data.
I wonder what's going to happen if it does calm down a bit. Like, we've sort of crazy wokey stuff on one side seems to be chilling out a little bit. Trump seems to be moderating himself. Maybe that's just in the run up to the actual voting point, or maybe that's actually indicative of what he's trying to do longer term.
Well, I think at the end of the day, you have to look at it didn't work. The at the end of the day, like where you go, why is it, why are things like moving away from that? You go, because it didn't work very
effective.
Good. Yeah, it was ineffective. So
your job during the campaign is to get elected. You did a thing, it didn't get you elected. Do a different thing and see if it works.
Yeah, and then also, but what it also probably. I mean, okay, Canada's obviously like a more aggressive example. They've had 12 years of Justin Trudeau, who's like a clown, right? And you go
with face paint.
Yeah, and there's like people went from mostly people being fairly liberal to people having like fuck Trudeau stickers on the like turned into like a Republican dad over night. You know what I mean? Like people are legit. Your average person is is talking about the Second Amendment and stuff like that, right? And that to me, that's what that did. It made people go the other way because it was, so flawed, like logically, that I think that like most dudes just weren't like, I'm not buying what you're selling.
You end up with reaction.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's in addition to like politically, it was somewhat not effective in the long term. It's probably, I mean, it might be, to be honest, it might have been somewhat effective at points to get people elected, but probably not to make anything better. That's for sure.
Well, that's the game, right? Is between what you need to do or say in order to be able to get yourself into office. But what does that actually do in terms of making the world a better place?
And how do you do it again? You know what I mean? It's like the girl that you promised the world and didn't deliver, you can, that's how you
well, that's the thing. That's the mad thing about the sort of Kamala situation is that you're in power now. Like you've been in office. I know you're like number two or whatever, but all of the things that you're highlighting that are problems with the country that need to be fixed. There has to be attention when it comes to the talking points that her team are creating for her. That is, well, we can kind of derogate where the world and the country is at right now, but we can't do it too much because kind of we were in charge a bit. Whereas the person that is the opponent as opposed to the incumbent, is she the incumbent? I guess kind of not. The person that's on the other side can go, this has been ruined, I'll come in and fix it. Like all of the problems are their fault, technically her fault. She's got like a bit of culpable deniability, but not that much. Because it's like, well, you were fucking inside of the tent pissing out, not Trump trying to burn it down from the outside.
I mean, I think you're talking to like your audience and you're talking to voters the way that maybe people are supposed to think about it, but I don't think that is how people think about it. I mean, most people have their one issue. Like any girl that I know that's like, yeah, I'm not voting for Trump. Like he's against abortion. End of story. Like that's so many New York people. I mean, really, that's all like semantics. It's like an argument that changes nothing to some degree.
Well, it's wild. Every time that I read an assessment, if it's Nate Silver, that polling guy, or even like more partisan media stuff, everybody that's talking about polling is basically saying almost all of this campaigning stuff could just be shut down. Probably 98% or 99% of America could just switch off about the election, and there's like 4 counties in Pennsylvania and a couple in Nevada, and they can actually deal with it.
It always seems weird to me. Well, yeah, people have probably made this point, but they're like, all the undecided voters. You're like, who?
No,
like, I don't know anyone that's like
5%
at this point is like, oh, I don't know. They're both good. It's like, who is that guy? I mean, the only thing I get is the guy who, do I like this person enough to actually get off my ass and do it?
Yes.
To me, that makes sense. When they always talk about undecided, but to me, it probably seems more like
unregistered.
Yeah. You're
not yet registered.
Am I actually, this guy that, maybe, I prefer Trump, but I don't like Kamala. You're like, are you actually going to go do it? And you're like, probably not.
Motivated enough to
Can you get that
actually
guy to vote? To me, that feels like more what it's about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But when you think, I think it's about 5% of voters are class themselves as undecided or are classed as undecided. But then of that 5% of 330 million people, how many of them have registered to vote? How many of them are going to go and vote? And of that subset, how many of them live in the counties of the places that actually matter? The Pennsylvania, the Nevada, the whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
It's like you might actually be talking about the entire political campaign running rampant across the world being for less than 1 million people. That might actually be who it is.
It's a lot of money for those people.
Less than 1 million people. Like that might be who all of this stuff is being funneled toward. The only ones that matter, can vote, will vote.
I guess it's really based on blunders then, at this point you go, I don't know if there's anything good someone could do, or like their speech was so good they changed people's mind. It's really like, did you not mess up so bad that you dropped a point?
You're going on Call Her Daddy. That's a high risk strategy there for you. I don't know. You are right though. I mean, how many times Trump did Flagrant with Schultz?
To me, I didn't see it that way. Where it is hilarious to me, but to me that felt like, I mean, the Call Her Daddy when they were doing the like blowjob tutorials, that was more like the 5 years ago Barstool days, from what I understand.
Yep.
So really, it was like from what I think in my mind, what I think it is now is like women talking about mental health, and you know what I mean?
Chick talk.
Yeah, like that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So
it's Hailey Bieber talking about how difficult it is to deal with the pressures of fame and stuff like that.
Like a lot of that kind of shit.
That's what I think it is too. Although, yeah, you're right. Alex kind of branded herself as one thing, and then
she wanted to get out of it.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the case. But we're playing off errors, not successes, I think is like absolutely dialed. Like fucking straight on the money. How many times that Trump was on Schultz's show and he described himself as, I think, like kind of truthful, or I'm a mostly truthful person or something like that. And everybody, Schultz was like, what? Mostly true. Like, what is that? That was in a campaign ad for Kamala like today.
Really?
Yeah, that happened. They recorded it on Monday. It came out yesterday. It was in a campaign ad today. So it very much is just obsessively watch what the other candidate does.
See if you can find a blunder.
Yeah. So the amount of, I guess, opportunities that you give the other person, like the fewer opportunity if you don't do so many.
You think that's kind of wild when you look at it, where you go, like, all these people that are kind of like pivotal people in deciding the election now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of wild, like the media like changed so much, and you kind of, in the last 5 years, you look around, you go, oh, I guess I'm like, it's like your friends that are kind of like
Andrew
pretty
Schultz
pivotal.
Is apparently
in these, like,
fucking
things.
important in the future of the country somehow.
Yeah, and a lot of people like that. It's pretty like kind of wild.
It is pretty strange. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Like it's kind of flattering to everybody that it's power, but it also feels a lot like, who the fuck? I keep bringing this up. There's this image of Mark Zuckerberg in front of Congress, and he's being shouted at. It's when he still was
They
AI.
love shouting at them.
But it was
Congress.
like AI Mark, where everyone was sure he was a lizard robot person, and not Chad Mark now with the beard and a necklace chain.
Grills.
Yeah. He's fucking
Hype beast Mark.
Absolutely. He is, yeah. He's Erewhon Mark. And it was just an image of a guy who 15 years ago had tried to be able to work out who was hotter on a website and whether you were in a relationship with someone or not.
Yeah.
Now being told that he's suppressing information which is crucial to the future of the republic or some shit. And he's like this. And
you're just like, it's just a guy.
But it's kind of the same with, what the fuck is going on that Alex Cooper, some girl that just wanted to have a chat with her friends and like maybe some famous chicks about what it's like to fucking be a girl and grow up and have casual sex or something.
Be a whore.
And now you're having a chat with like the vice president, potential future president of the country. You go, we've handed a lot of power to like random people.
Well, we didn't hand it to them. They took it
themselves. Yeah, they've grown that power. Yeah, it's super interesting. It's fucking
the people that had the power before like proved themselves not to be trusted, and then people left.
Massive.
It's kind of. I mean, there's that. I'm sure you've heard it in tech where they like everything is just centralizing and decentralizing again. Well, basically, like every new company is bundling and unbundling of some sort, where it's like, there was, first it was, songs were a thing, and then you started having CDs, and then basically, then they started, the new company was like, you could buy a bunch of CDs at once, and then it was back to like original songs, and then Spotify bundles them again, and like, so basically, there's a thing that every company is basically like bundling and then unbundling products. But I was kind of thinking like, it's almost like if you look at everything, politics, culture, it's all just fashion going from baggy to tight and tight to baggy. Like it kind of relates to like everything. But it's like music always goes from like soft to hard or like technical and then back to like kind of nihilistic. It doesn't matter. Like the rap, and then you get the rapper who's like, I'm the best at rapping, and then you go to the guy that's like, I don't even care about being good. It's not about that. It just goes back and forth. But it's all just things going from tight to baggy, baggy to tight. And like politics and media, it kind of is like that too, where it really went from like, it went from baggy or tight, which is
Prim,
button
proper.
down, prim and proper, to baggy, which is like a bunch of people like talking shit on a podcast. And then, so it's like all of, kind of culture is just things going from tight to baggy and baggy to tight.
That's a really fucking good point. I'd never thought of that. But also, it's in line with what you were saying about the Trump Biden and then Trump Kamala debates. And you go, that could have been the intro to the Flagrant episode. It's the same tenor. Do you know what I mean? It's personal
right.
insults.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's like the exact same. So for us to say, oh, isn't it crazy that now Alex Cooper and Andrew Schultz and all of these people have got, Aiden Ross is important to the future of Donald Trump's presidency and stuff like that. And you go, oh, kind of, but only if you're comparing it to the wrong period in history. If you compare it to the right period in history, which is right fucking now, it makes total sense.
That's what happens. Yeah,
I don't think he knows what he said at the end of that sentence. He doesn't know either. Like, it was just, it's continuation.
Yeah, it's the removal of like gatekeepers, but yeah, you can imagine why that like
even when they're on the gatekeeper program, they had to reinstall gatekeepers, as in there's a way that we can mute your mic. Like that's a physical fucking gatekeeper, because the natural decorum that would have typically been had in a presidential debate. Do you ever see that one? It was whoever Obama ran up against in like 2012, whoever that was. And they go and they sort of shake hands at the beginning. And I think, before we get started, I'd like to wish the honorable gentleman's wife a very happy birthday. And you think, who fucking... it's fucking lame shit. Come on. Call him a dick.
It's always switches. To me, it's like politics is politics, and then it becomes culture. You know what I mean? Where, Trump is culture, where it's like you could, whether or not you were into politics, you had an opinion on Trump. So it kind of transcends, there's certain issues like men and women and, race stuff that they're kind of more of part of culture. And then there's issues that are less sexy, like the Federal Reserve, which are the actual, usually important ones. Yeah. That kind of, they're not sexy, right?
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Magic Spoon. You probably know Magic Spoon for their super popular high-protein cereal that's got 75,000 five-star reviews, which I'm sure you're aware of. Well, now they've turned those cereals into treats that taste just like classic crunchy cereal bars that you had growing up, but with way more protein and less sugar. It's like a tasty, guilt-free time machine taking you back to your childhood. They have a crispy and airy texture that tastes phenomenal, and every treat has 11 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and only 4 net grams of carbs, so you can actually feel good about something that you're enjoying eating. They're great for pre-workout, traveling, or midnight snacks. Best of all, they have 6 deliciously nostalgic flavors, including marshmallow, chocolate peanut butter, blueberry, double chocolate, birthday cake, and strawberry milkshake. Right now, you can get $5 off your next order by going to the link in the description below at magicspoon.com/modernwisdom. That's magicspoon.com/modernwisdom. Or you can look for Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store. There's an idea called the barber pole when it comes to fashion. So if you imagine you've got 4 layers, you've got lower class, lower middle, and upper. And basically each different group is trying to pretend to be one above them. You can't pretend to be 2 above you. So you know how a barber pole, when it rotates, it goes up and then it restarts at the bottom. Like if you think about...
It's pretty good. I like it.
Talking about the baggy to tight, tight to baggy thing, when Kanye West started making clothing, what was it? It was like almost hobo chic, right? It was like literally like oversized long sleeves.
For $1 million.
Correct.
Here's
So
a ripped up shirt for $1 million.
the only people that could afford it were the people at the top of the barber pole. But how were they dressing? They were dressing like the people at the bottom of the barber pole. So while
fuck, I like it. Yeah, that's good.
You're signaling, but the only reason
because everyone's going one up, but when you're at the
top, you've got to go right.
That's the hedge fund kid's son.
Red sneakers,
slum or the Mark Zuckerberg
where they don't
tech
need to,
thing where they're all wearing the hoodies.
It's the same as the guy that just got his PhD saying it's Dr. Long actually, as opposed to the dude that's been a practicing surgeon for 50 years.
Call me Mark,
100%.
That's a great theory. Yeah.
So I love that barber pole idea. So I'm always thinking about, okay, what's this person signaling and who are they trying to be?
You know what? I'll tell you what kind of something that I think about that relates to that, because when you're thinking about, people are always moving and looking to present themselves as something different. I'm always like, never listen to anyone who hasn't been the thing for less than 2 years. Mm-hmm. So when someone's telling you about religion, you'll have a friend that's like, I'm religious, here's why it's great. Or I'm, here's why, they just got into
veganism.
Yeah. Or just got into right-wing stuff and they're like, calling you a sheep now. Like, and it was like a week ago, this guy was watching CNN, you know what I mean? Like, but I feel like 2 years is the amount where you have to be in it for 2 years before I want to hear.
Then you can preach to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then, otherwise it's like, use that on someone else. So like if you want to go talk to your family and bother your coworkers and your bullshit, I don't want to be the test subject for you,
playing with your new toy.
Playing with your new toy. Yeah. Now I'm a sucker.
Yeah.
If you find yourself being like,
what am I, a fucking am I a petri dish for your like dog shit new ideas?
Yeah. That's when you're a sucker.
That's a good point. You're an easy mark for me to like dick about with this new idea. One of my friends has a rule where he never listens to the suggestions that anyone's got for software and like productivity. He's like into productivity and stuff. And everybody's known, oh bro, I've got this new task management app, and it loops in with Google Calendar and then it automatically populates, it tracks all your time, and then you can do it on your phone and it automatically does all of this stuff. And he's like, how long have you used it for? And he goes, about 2.5 weeks. He goes, so his rule is he never takes suggestions for software for anyone that's used it for less than 5 years.
Yeah, because they don't know all the problems.
Yes, yeah. What's the limits that this thing comes up against? What's it like living with this thing day to day? When the shininess and the novelties off, what is left?
When I'm like working with people, especially like film's a big one for this, comedy even more so in any sort of like comedy film sense. It's like everyone's pretty good at their job until there's a problem, right? So people that aren't that good, that haven't been, done it for every year. Like really what makes like a great sound guy a lot of times is like they've dealt with every single problem.
100%.
So nothing will happen and there's a peace of mind to know, whereas someone that's not that good, and a lot of people that are mediocre will always kind of be like, well, this is wrong and this is wrong. You're like, yeah, things go wrong.
Everyone can be good at their job when there's problems.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Everyone can be good at everything. Like you can spend 6 months getting to the point where you're good at this in perfect conditions, but like being good at something means there's not. So people that kind of have that thing often you find you like hire them and they'll kind of be like, well, this went wrong and this went wrong, and they'll always be giving you things that went wrong, and you're like, yeah, things go wrong. I don't know.
That's why you're hired. You're hired to stop things.
When I used to do like showcases in comedy.
What's that?
Like if you, let's say, they have festivals and TV things. So people would be on the
like that Moon Tower thing.
It's kind of like how people auditioned for things for a long time. Like a lot of times they would have people audition this way, and stand-ups you kind of audition by doing stand-up. But a lot of times, especially in the 2017, 18 eras, there was a lot of people that were, shooting up in the industries that weren't actually that good at the thing. So I would always, whenever I always would hate when it was a hot crowd. I would love it. Like whenever I was doing because you're like, if there's 10 people and 4 of them, like they're not even that good. If it's a hot crowd, you're not gonna be able to tell which one of those are. If it's a bad crowd, those people are all gonna bomb.
Oh, it's the proving ground.
Yeah, so I always used to like it when it was, whereas if you've been doing this forever and you're pretty good at it, you're like, oh, I actually know how to switch this, like, or whatever.
Yeah.
No, you're not gonna every time, but like you might be able to do it, they won't be able to do it.
That's so good.
So I always
I've been using this analogy about lifting on Mars or lifting on Jupiter. So Mars less gravity, Jupiter more gravity, and what you want to basically do is do your practicing where you're lifting on Jupiter and do your performance when you're lifting on Mars.
Yeah.
So like prepare for the worst and hope for the best type thing, and that's really interesting. I've got my first set of work in progress shows for the next live tour happening starting this Monday that you helped me with last year, and
yeah, it was cool.
I've got the same thing again where I'm like, the room's really cool, it's really dark, it's
you want the
perfect
opposite
temperature. Yeah, I'm like, fucking, can we?
Well, Jerry Seinfeld has a pretty good point about it. That applies to I think a lot of things, but he has pretty good points. He doesn't make much comedy, but he has good points on comedy. But he goes that good rooms are for exploring and bad rooms are for refining.
Oh, that's great.
So this goes a little against what you're saying, but if you're looking to like figure it out at the beginning, that's not the worst to have like a good room where people are supportive. However, I would imagine the most of your rooms are that. Like I can't imagine you're gonna do like if you did like a small room for 100
crowd.
Yeah, and people are fun. It's like a I doubt you're gonna get that energy.
I've been loving. I mean, I need to thank you, and you thanked me at the beginning, but I got to thank you with some of the stuff that you gave me last year was so fucking amazing. If you are a person who doesn't have a friend that's a top flight comedian, which maybe I guess most people don't, but I texted you a couple of times about a few things I was trying to work out. You could have been on the toilet or like in an Uber somewhere, and I just got nothing short of like pure gold that given 100 years I couldn't have written. Just this like stream of consciousness from you on my iMessage, and I still like hold on to these fucking bits. Like you won't even remember them. You won't even remember what there's like one bit about Amber Heard, which was just fucking phenomenal. Like this 3-part bit. There's another bit about Bill Cosby. There's another bit about something else. I was like, it blows my mind. Like to see, I guess it's probably what it must feel like if you have a friend that's an unbelievable MMA fighter and you just know him, right? You just talk, you go for dinner, you hang out, and then every so often you get to watch him put on this very specific set of skills on display, and you go, holy fuck. Like, what's that? What's that bit of you? And it's just this like growth, this sort of like bit of the additional side of your entire capacity that nobody else has. So yeah,
there is like a brain thing of like how jokes work. And I think but so you kind of get good at doing that. And I think for what you were doing too, there was an element where it's like, a bunch of 8s would be like really good in this hour, but like when you're actually, trying to put together like a thing that the purpose of this is just pure stand up, you go, 8s don't usually make the cut.
Yeah.
And then also there's usually, I maybe like had a idea of like what type of stuff remember there was one joke where you're like, I don't really get this one. And I'm like, listen, I obviously do what you want, but I'm telling you that's the one that'll get.
That was the Amber Heard. That's the Amber Heard.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, yeah.
I could just tell. It was
I
like
trust you,
thing,
and sure enough, did it, and it fucking destroys. And I was like, it's so wild. But yeah, to think about like the capacities that your friends have, and to go, I just get to see you, and you sort of usually do this thing, and then
you actually saw last time. So when the special that I just released, you came and saw the second time I started putting that hour together here.
Yes.
That was like the second time I started putting that together. And then that was 2 years later.
Fuck. What else have you got? Have you got anything else that you want to go through?
I have a couple.
From home.
Yeah, I told you I brought a couple of like points that I've been thinking about for the last like a few days. So I was thinking that in politics, you can either be the funner side or the more righteous side, and you can't be both. And it always kind of switches back. And whoever's the funner side, it's too delectable for them to not start being the righteous side, because it's like righteous, like being righteous is like so, maybe not addictive is the right word. It's so appealing. Like you just want to. So, but the funner side usually does better. But when you're the funner side and then that expands, the funner side can't help but start being the righteous side once you have like a movement.
Who's the funnest
So you built a movement with the funner side. I think right now, it clearly like, obviously at one point the liberals were the funner side. They became the less fun side. I think that Republicans became the funner side. Now probably like, they were the OG, like it is fun. It's funner to just be like, fuck yeah, America guns, like jet skis, than to be, telling you what, you can tweet or whatever, right?
Federal Reserve and
Right.
immigrants and
Now I think that the draw to be righteous is like very strong on both, in my opinion, right now. So I feel righteousness coming at me from both ways.
Well, it's interesting. Getting spit roasted by
I
righteousness.
feel like a little bit. Yeah. Probably. Yeah.
It's funny that definitely when Kamala got nominated first or whatever, it's all vibes, and you were just brat summering our way through. She's so cool, and it was memes and all the rest of it. But you do have this very moralistic side that's righteous because Roe versus Wade and abortion is such a key part of the talking point. So you can't you can't speak non-seriously about what you're saying is an existential threat to 50% of the entire fucking country.
Yeah.
So you can't fuck about with it. But then you've got this sort of brand, and I guess with Trump as well, his whole thing is to be I'm going to flip the table over, I'll drain the swamp, I'll say funny things. You go, well, yeah, but if you do that, what are you actually going to, we've got all of these problems. What about the communists? You can't call them communists and just meme lord your way through tweeting and truth socialing everything.
It kind of is in real life too. There's a little bit of, definitely in comedy where you go, it's very attractive to kind of be like, I don't even fucking pay attention to that shit. But then once you do, it's it's hard to go back. I think that was the big problem liberals had, is they all kind of were scolding you, and then they went back to trying to be silly, and you're like, what the fuck? Yeah. It's you always see on stage a guy, there'll be an audience member, he'll start yelling, get the fuck out, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, this is a real show, and blah. And then he tries to go back to so I'm on the bus, and it's just ridiculous, right? But I think that in people, it's people, it's funner to be the I'm not, I don't, whatever. And then, but then it's attractive to be okay, actually, this is ridiculous. So it's very, there's always a pull to go be the righteous
baggy
side.
To loose, loose to baggy.
Yeah.
Tight to baggy, baggy to tight. Yeah.
Tight to baggy, baggy to tight. I guess it's back to that.
Yeah.
I think that I had a funny theory that how girls put guys in friend zones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people say, well, what's the guy version of that, right? And the guy version of that is grandmother treatment. So so a girl puts a guy in a friend zone, because for girls, that's male friend is really the most non-sexual thing. Whereas a guy, you'd be yeah, I'll fuck. I could be friends with a girl and fuck her. But the guys see friends as higher. So girls, when they treat a guy like a friend, it's very a little brother, like a friend. Those are very the least sexual. That's the lowest run. Whereas guy version of that is grandmother. So you would never talk about anything real. You would never talk about anything sexual. And I'm sure you have women in your life like that. You're oh, how's it going? They'd be, and if they ever said something sexual, oh, that guy's hot, you're yeah, he seems to be doing pretty good. You would never engage with anything sexual. She'd be I'm masturbating. You'd be speaking of pregnancy, Nancy's having another kid. You would never engage in anything sexual. The grandmother treatment is the guy version of friend zone.
But when does that get deployed? Who uses that ever?
I would say, where do I deploy grandmother treatment? I would say a lot of people that are your coworkers, for example.
Right. Okay. Because of all of the female coworkers you've got?
I would say, okay, there's no way to, okay, I'm sure, listen, you're a good looking guy, girls like you, obviously. I would imagine that if you show up to a city like Austin, there's plenty of girls that are around that you would probably make a lot of enemies if you just ran through a bunch of the hot girls in a city. So you're smart enough to not do anything like that. You're not that guy anyway, but
friends, girlfriends, friends, ex-girlfriend.
Whatever, shit like that. Exactly, right? So you would probably just not do that stuff because, or
friend's
or your friend's girl.
That's actually a really fucking good one. So
you would treat them like the way you treat your grandmother.
That's so funny. You're actually really right. I'm now starting to find little pockets of girls that fit into that. Friends, ex-girlfriends are a big one.
Friends, ex-girlfriends is the perfect grandmother treatment, and you get ultimate grandmother treatment. You're very pleasant to them.
Yep.
You're very nice.
You've basically sort of
you might be overly nice to them.
You've detached your penis and left it outside.
The penis is not in the, yes, it's so gone.
Yeah, actually.
And opinions. You might not tell them opinions either.
So the grandmother treatment is gay best friend. That's basically what you're trying to position yourself as.
Yes.
You're your hair looks lovely, and isn't it nice outside?
Gay best friend would probably drift into the, then I was, your hair looks lovely. But if she ever said if your grandmother ex-friend or so, if she was give you a really extreme political opinion, right? And it could literally be you know, like this Hitler guy's actually the man, you'd be like, oh, everyone has good points. Like there's no way you're not engaging.
You just don't engage at all with anything. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, there was a time when I was in the gym not too long ago, and one of my friend's ex-girlfriends like had this crop top thing on and took a crop top off, huge fake boobs. One nipple was out. And I was like, fucking hot day today, isn't it? And I'm like, have you seen there's a dog over there? And I didn't even tell her. I was like, I'm going to let someone else. I'm going to let somebody else sort of, she walks away. That was like a bad friend thing to do, but it was like almost the secondhand sort of grandmother. Like exactly. I can't not.
I can't, I don't want anyone to know that I've seen your boob. I don't want you to know. I don't want me to know. I definitely don't want to address it.
Single titty. One titty that's out. But no, that's a really great point. The friend zone thing is so, I mean, it's become like...
People, they go, oh, what's the female equivalent? That's what it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, friends, ex-girlfriends, and current friends, girlfriends, and shit like that. And like the orbiter thing, or like people that your boys, you know that your boy fancies her. Mm-hmm. So you're like, I gotta do this.
The only thing you're talking about is how sick he is.
Yeah, the gay best friend thing comes in again.
Yeah.
Dude, great cock.
One kind of other quick one just about that was, there was sort of, I was thinking about, there's this girl that I knew that she said, she was like, I knew the girl and the guy and they were friends forever. And then they ended up being together, but they've been friends for 6 years. And someone was like, why were you, what took you so long? And she goes, honestly, it never even crossed my mind. And I was like, that like stuck with me where I was like, no guys, it crossed his mind. You know what I mean? Like no guy's known a woman for 6 years and it's like, it's never crossed your mind. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about, I think that like men treat our thoughts sort of like a friend that's a piece of shit. That's like, yo, you should try to fuck that girl. And you're like, no, you're not doing that. He's like, yo, we should party tonight. And you're like, I told you I'm having like 3 beers. Like, and women treat their brains like an abusive ex-boyfriend and they defend it because they'll write about like articles being like, it's actually pretty reasonable to be drunk texting your ex. So, because guys' thoughts are more aggressive. So they're like, yo, do all, and you're like, we know
we can't let
we don't
out.
Defend our own brain because we're like, this guy's too much, man.
Yeah.
Like, whereas girls, like, they defend their thoughts. Like, I'm not weird for thinking this. Nothing wrong with
your best friend's brother. Actually, could be the right guy for you.
Yeah, they write the article defending the crazy shit that they're thinking.
Yes. Fuck.
So that's my other one.
Dude, I think that I can't stop thinking about that grandmother thing. About
grandmother treatment.
Fucking real.
You know what? I had an old saying that me and my friends used to say forever that just came back. It's kind of just grandmother treatment reminds me of it, but not related. But I said, we used to always joke that when, like, you know, if you're dating a girl and it's been like 3 or 4 months and she's kind of like, what is this? We used to always say our one friend was an expert at it. You play the groggy, tired guy where you're kind of like, oh, maybe like talk about this tomorrow. It's kind of like an employee being like, you know, we're going to talk about the raise. You're like, I don't know, today, you know, what time is it even? Like, you basically act like you're really groggy. Like in the morning, like, okay, fucking... No, I'm down to have this conversation. I just fucking like
very forgetful.
Yeah, you act like you're just so groggy, right? And we said our one friend was like always looking groggy, so he could never get into he'd never get tricked into a relationship because he's so groggy. But it's like a joke we used to say. But then I was watching like interview. I was watching a lot of the like the interviews with rappers when I was getting into the Drake and Kendrick stuff because I'm from Toronto. And I was saying all rappers do the groggy, tired guy to every question. Like if you watch like No Jumper, like Adam 22 and stuff, and they'll be like, you know, where were you the night of this? And he's like, fucking, why you asking? What? Like, every rapper dodges every question by doing the groggy, tired man. And I was like, it's kind of brilliant. You dodge every question and you act
like pretending like you're not in the room.
Yeah, you're like, what? I barely know my name right now. Like, hey, I can't, that seems like a lot for I don't know what I'm thinking of.
What do you think? Speaking of the rapper beef, I really haven't paid anywhere near enough attention to the P-Diddy stuff. I know the outline of the story. We don't need to. We don't need to do a 30,000-foot view of 1,000 bottles of blue.
I'm sure there's been a lot of them done too.
Is that in any way linked to the rap world, or is it all just culture and like weird sex party stuff? Or is it going to end up being that he was looped in with some other rapper that ended up
It depends who you ask, man. If you ask the rapper,
I don't know how deep the fucking rabbit hole of this goes.
I mean, there's always that community that's just like, all of Hollywood and rap is trying to make black dudes banged guys, right?
You were the first person to ever teach me about this when we were texting about the Cat Williams thing.
Oh, you didn't know about
I
that
didn't know.
stuff.
And you were like, oh, this is the meme of Hollywood, that Hollywood just tries to put black men in dresses.
Yeah.
And I texted you and I was like, what? You're like, well, you mean you don't know? Like, this is the meme.
Yeah, right. Because
I had no idea.
Britain, it's not a thing.
I had no idea that, but this is maybe a further continuation. So P-Diddy.
Well, it's like every comedian,
like
they're like, they always make them in a dress. And Chappelle said it, and Cat Williams, and Dick Gregory was like, if you watch Dick Gregory, like he has these old videos on, YouTube, and it's just like, I mean, I'm sure there's, like anything, there's some truth to it and not truth, but it's literally like every move that was ever made in history is to make me suck a dick. Like, you know what I mean? Like it goes deep, right? And to me, as a white guy, like, obviously I find guys in dresses funny. I find, gay shit funny. So when they're always saying this, and they're always trying to make black guys in dresses, I'm like, every one of my comedian friends is also wearing a dress. You're like, no, we're wearing them too. Like, but I guess it's white. I think what it is like white and Jewish, like Hollywood writers writing white sensibilities for, black guys that are like, they don't realize that like, this guy's going to get killed if he does that. Like the same way that right now, if you're like, hey, if I go out, if you're just like a normal commentator that's like, maybe associated with like the UFC or something, but you're not like a political guy coming out and being like, you got to get vaxxed and you got, just like maybe all that stuff. You're like, you do realize this isn't like free for me. Like these opinions have like a lot of weight in the communities that I'm part of. And I think that, feminizing yourself to like black culture, they're like, that's the number one, you sold out shit, right? So they see it as like, I'm sure there's both. Maybe there is some, control components, but I think a lot of it is like, writers that are guys like me writing stuff for, black guys and being like, yeah, and then you guys fucking kiss without realizing that they're like, his community's gonna like obliterate him if he does that.
Yeah.
So I think some of it's that.
You know what it carries the weight of with all of this? It is I totally didn't realize, and I said this to you when I watched the Cat Williams thing, like it is, when you hear somebody that's a Mexican person or whatever, like an Asian person or whatever, that's speaking your language, but the way that they speak, like the pacing that they speak at and the cadence and the accent and the pronunciation of the word, everything, you kind of need to tune an old radio in and you're like, oh, there we are. I'm fucking in. And it's like that. It was like that listening to Cat Williams on Club Shake Shake.
Sure.
I'm like, what? There it is.
Then you click in.
I'm not trying to beat match. I'm DJ trying to beat match, and I'm phasing it up. I'm out of phase. There it is. I'm locked in. It just took time for me to really get it, and then you realize, oh, this is an entire other world. This is. The references are different. The people they're talking about are different. The way they're talking about things are different. Their assumptions about the world are different. And you go, like, shock, horror, person from different culture has different worldview than you. Like, who's surprised by this? Nobody. But I think it was one of the first.
And it's a different culture in a different culture because you're not even American.
Double different culture. But I think, and I keep talking about this, when you're an immigrant in a country that speaks the language that you speak, you're off the knicknacks.
No, I have a knick-knack show.
You've spat in the face.
Dude, I'm loving these, by the way. We have them in our studio.
Good.
We have them on our show all the time.
You're on the rotation,
the boys
man,
cast,
between Newtonic and Knick-Knack.
Yeah, Danny loves them too.
Stimulated. When you're an immigrant in a country that speaks the same language that you do, you forget that you're an immigrant. Because if you're in, again, Guatemala or fucking France or something, you're permanently reminded of the fact that you're not from there. But when everybody understands you, it kind of creeps up on you. And then every so often you try to use some cultural artifact or history thing or, somebody from your pop culture in your past or whatever. And you go, oh, I can't use that. I can't say that thing. I need to say, so that's kind of like, Bill Cosby or like, fucking Kool-Aid or whatever. And you think, what is the thing that I think
one wants to hear your Queen Elizabeth references.
Exactly, yeah. No one gets my Battle of Hastings like talking points. So very much with that.
Bill Burr had a thing once where he said, he goes, the number one, or I think it was Bill Burr, but it might have been someone else. But he was like, the number one way to start sounding old in your comedy is your references are dated. And it was like, it might have been Chris Rock, actually, one of those guys. But yeah, he was basically like, that's, it's like, it's crazy the extent to which like old things are just relevant, but you just got to change a few words.
Yeah, but so listening to
change Britney Spears to Taylor Swift, like, you know what I mean?
It's basically the same talking points. Though. I mean, Britney Spears. It's been a little while since she's popped up on my timeline, but my God, that period where she like got access to her phone back again, and it looked all kind of serial killery, but it was an iPhone 5 or something, and you go, Britney, like if you're gonna do dances in the like entrance hallway to your mansion, don't record it on a potato.
I had a bit of a contrarian view on that. I want to go back to the British thing, because I actually listened to your interview with that British guy talking about the differences, and I thought it was really cool. But the Britney thing, I was thinking, and I'm like you, was like that, where I felt I was in the mob. Everyone's like, free this woman, and then she got her phone back, and everyone was like, maybe she should be back in the thing, right? And it was just like. And then I remember a guy that I know tweeted, he was like, we should have never freed her. I go, what do you mean we? Like, do you think that you, like, that's what internet does to us. Like, you're a guy being like, I should have never let Britney out, like, back in the dungeon with her. And I was also like, if showing your tits on camera gets you put back in your dungeon, like, I got news for half this country. So I was kind of laughing at like, I also was
your own self-importance.
Yeah. You're kind of like, we shouldn't have, like, what the, we. Like, yeah, we're all part of the mob. And like,
what were you thinking about the UK?
I just thought it was interesting. Like the main things you were saying about how, you'll have why are people more successful here? What is it about that? And it was, you were saying there's a lot of funny people in Britain. Why are all the comedians here? And there's this element of, the crabs in a bucket of like, oh yeah, you're going to go be a fucking famous. Like that's who you think. Oh yeah. Like you think you're like, oh, and that is a funny instinct. And a lot of the better people have that instinct of being like, oh, you think you're so good. So how do you remove that like, shame and find the balance of, how do you find there's kind of two things. One is if you be too nuanced, you won't ever say anything, right? Also, if you be too cool, you'll never say anything, right? So if you're like too cool for everything and too nuanced for everything, and then also like you're too cool to fail, which means you never try anything.
Yep.
And I think that's, it's a lot of that too, right?
Too much care and attention and not enough care and attention.
And too much pride, like there's pride.
It's funny that the self-deprecation and the sort of sardonic wit and the sort of cutting elements of British culture are awesome, but they're also, they cause you to be in stasis because you're so fucking terrified of doing anything in case people take the piss.
Yeah.
So the very thing that makes you potentially funny is also the very thing that makes you terrified of trying to be funny.
And also makes you a pussy. Like, you know what I mean? And I don't just mean you. I mean, me or, British commentators, a lot of times I see that. It's like, but so sometimes it can make you like not bold.
Well, that's why someone like Piers Morgan, for instance, is a bit of an outlier. Like you don't have a massive number of people that have gone, like most British people, if you're going to get them and port them over and they're going to do that kind of thing, are going to be James Corden. They're not going to be Piers Morgan. Right, Piers Morgan just he'll fight you on the beaches and he'll like hold your feet to the fire, and Ben Shapiro, you and your gun rights, like 15 years ago that debate was had, and he's still doing it. Now it's about Hamas or it's about Ukraine or it's about P-Diddy or it's about whatever. Like he's just still wielding a big flame sword. He did it in the US, he did it in the UK again. You go, yeah, that's it. Ricky Gervais, like just overcame the concern about it and then goes and just scorches. What was it, the Oscars or the Golden Globes?
The Hollywood's Oscars,
yeah. That he did that with. And you go, okay, that's what happens when someone's able to retain their ability to be cutting, but reaches escape velocity to get out from the self-doubt.
And he still has his Britishness in him. Like he's, in a way, he, kind of disappears for a bit and then comes back. Like he doesn't seem like he's, lives kind of a modest life. He doesn't have this, like, why am I not a movie star? Because to be honest, there could be that. Like, why am I, why didn't I become Jim Carrey? Like, he could easily have that attitude, but he kind of is like, no, I'm, happy with my lot and whatever, which is in some ways British.
Very British.
Cultures in America go from like oh, here's a new thing to like every variation of this has been corporatized within like, it's
Well, like-
corporatized and sold within like 2 years.
Well, like,
What would be an example of that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll pick a comedy thing and then I'll pick a like business thing. In comedy, I would say crowd work would be an example of where comedians kind of realize that, oh, like doing crowd work would be like a good way and people like it and it works well with algorithms, right? And I think that like people from where I'm from, people from, you know, London have a little bit of like, yeah, I'll do a bit of that, but I'm not going to, you know, whereas in America, it was just like within a year, you saw every person be like, this is my whole thing, to the point, it got to the point where people were like almost sick of seeing it. That took a year.
Right. The meme cycle was in and out in the space. Like Jimmy Carr's done it. It blew up. Let's try it, intro it, get too much, and then it's old.
Yeah. And you could say that with like a genre of, you know, reality shows, you know, I would say.
Well, superhero movies, right? How long did it go from Iron Man 1, like 2006, 2008, something like that, to Avengers Endgame? And then after that, like Thor 4, he's doing Jean-Claude Van Damme splits over a set of lorries.
Sure.
So there's this cool critical drinker. Do you know him? The sweary Scottish guy. He taught me about this. It's pretty cool. There's 4 phases, I think, to any media movement. I think it tracks with what you're talking about here as well. So I think there's introduction, growth, maturity, and parody. And it starts off with something that's new, it's groundbreaking. Let's say it's Iron Man. No one's ever seen this before. It's like slick and sexy as a superhero. It's kind of not as dark as all the DC shit. And then the growth, you end up still sort of building on what you've done previously. That's like Iron Man 2 and 3. You've got like Captain America. You've got Ant-Man. You've got all of these other bits and pieces. Then you've got maturity, which is we kind of know what to expect now. It's not so much about further establishing ourselves. It's about like rinse and repeat. It feels comfortable. But then you've got parody. When you get to parody, that's when you're in decline. And that's when Chris Hemsworth is made to be the butt of every joke. He's kind of this big lumbering idiot. He's a caricature of himself when he was in intro, growth, and maturity. And he is the joke. The joke is everything's meta. Nothing's actually about the thing. We've seen this with Suicide Squad, that you have to make a movie about superheroes, about bad guys, because it can't just be good-looking man or woman has good intentions, overcomes difficult things, and saves the world. No, it has to be this weird, like, upside-down meta commentary.
And you know how quickly it moves in America? That people are left still doing the parody when the thing doesn't exist anymore.
It's dead, and they're still flogging this fucking.
But that doesn't happen in other places because the thing's gone for so long. Like,
so that's the corporatized squeezing and rinsing.
yeah, do you remember
dry.
how many, like, I'm always, one of my favorites is like every comedian doing, and I love doing it too. It's almost become its own genre, but like the old school cop, like, Riggs, you know, I'm getting too old for this shit. Like, you know that? It was like, no one's making those movies, but everyone's making parodies of those movies. So the things comes and goes so quick that the parody outlives like the...
That's so
you go, you're making
good.
fun of something that doesn't exist.
Yes, but everybody knows. Everybody knows about the parody.
That's how
so
quick things move.
The parody phase was longer than the lifespan of the actual thing.
And there's so many things kind of like that.
Yes. What was your one from the business world?
You know, emo or like genres of music that are like, for 4 years, that's all you ever heard
In a
about.
Sleep Token t-shirt.
Oh yeah, you're into that stuff. I didn't know that.
Right.
Right.
Do you still listen to ska?
No, I was like a punk guy, but like, when I was growing up, like Rancid was kind of like, in my opinion.
You and Huberman.
They were, I kind of like all the same shit as Huberman. But he was, when that band came out, I think they were like very like defining. And they had a bit of, you know, that kind of like British punk and ska influence. Then ska with the Bosstones and everything really took over. And I kind of like that stuff, but I was more into the kind of that, the Rancid, like to me, that would be like the coolest band of my generation.
Yeah, I've decided that I'm going to start dressing like 15-year-old me would have wished that he could have dressed if he had an unlimited budget for t-shirts, like $25 t-shirts.
Yeah.
So I'm like in Neck Deep and Polaris and fucking Bad Omens and Sleep Token and Bring Me the Horizon. I'm like slowly trying to accumulate like all of the bands that I still listen to and used to listen to. I did this you remember Silverstein?
Yeah, you're like, why don't I just go buy $400 worth of t-shirts?
Yeah, and that's going to last me for the next like year and a half, but it's kind of, you know, I'll treat myself. myself.
Silverstein? Yeah, they're Canadian.
Yeah. So Discovering the Waterfront, the original record, I managed to find one of those t-shirts, like olive green with pink. And I was like, I don't care how much this cost. It was $35. I was like, it could have been $350 and I was going to buy that t-shirt because it was like something from 20 years ago that meant a lot to me. Bought it, wore it. I'm like, I fucking love this. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But you wear like band t-shirts too. I've seen you in
I
like
wear band
old school,
t-shirts.
old school shit. Yeah, funny.
Sometimes I'll think of that. Like sometimes it'll be like, a lot of times I'll be, one thing that'll happen now is a lot of the bands that I was so like involved in music that a lot of these people I'm friends with, right? And then, or it'll be like, I'll talk about something and then the guy will like it and message me and we'll start talking. And then when that happens, I'll be like, you know what, let me go buy a couple of their shirts. So then I'll just go to their merch store and like buy a few shirts. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
There's actually, my special I just did, that was like a pretty popular, like, kind of like punk reggae band from Canada called Il Scarlet. And they had a couple of like pretty big hits and he's like a good friend of mine. And I actually wanted to put their song on my special. And that
you would have got popped for copyright.
Yeah, exactly. It was a Sony song. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I didn't realize the extent to which it was going to be like the nightmare of my life for 3 months trying to get that song cleared.
You're kidding.
Oh, it's a nightmare. And the guy was like trying to make it out. He was suave. He's like a buddy of mine. He was trying to make it happen too.
So you that's what you ended up using because it is a kind of ska.
Yeah. That was like a very, very popular.
For the people that don't know, I guess if you don't make YouTube videos, why would you? You have to get sort of special dispensation to be able to use copyrighted music in your videos if you want to monetize them.
Yeah, good luck.
I think, well, because you're basically allowing, it would be like Sony going, hey, have some of our money. You go, dude, this is...
I was trying to pay them.
It's 20 seconds out of an hour and 20-second comedy special. It's the intro music to something that's taken me 2 years to write. Like people aren't coming and going, wow, I can't wait to re-listen to that 20 seconds so I never stream that song from Sony directly again.
Sure, yeah. But, I mean, that's even 100% true, but even, and the band signed off on it, but like they have a deal and that's the deal. But like more importantly than that, I wasn't trying to do this for free. I was trying to pay for it.
Please take my money.
Yeah.
Please take my money.
They'd put me onto some guy. He would put me onto some guy. He'd put me onto some guy. That guy would take a week. And like, it probably like, it took me like 4 or 5 weeks of like badgering people to like just get someone that would talk to me.
Well, I suppose that shows just how rare it is for anybody to use licensed music on YouTube, which kind of sucks.
Maybe that's part of it too. Or maybe like they see it as like, small potatoes.
Oh, right. If fucking Dave Chappelle had come and had like 1 million, he was my first special on YouTube, and you go, oh my God, it's going to do 200 million.
Yeah, maybe I could have got someone's attention a little easier.
Yeah.
Or maybe the song, maybe the thing, whatever.
Artist, right? Okay, yeah. How many people are bothered about this particular? Whereas if
do they have someone that's even like dealing with their files right now?
Yeah,
like,
if Kamala comes and says we want Taylor Swift to be our new campaign thing, and it's going to be the front and center. You go, okay, this is like 2 big deals.
Either way, it was a nightmare, but I'm glad I got it figured out.
That's good. Yeah, we used an MGK cover for a vlog recently. And I didn't realize it's because you want to monetize the video. If you don't want to monetize the video, I think you can get away with it like significantly more easily. But it's that they don't want you to nab any of the AdSense from them. And a bunch of people messaged me like, dude, how did you use MGK? Like, do you know MGK? I'm like, well, he's like a friend's friend, but I just think turn ads off. I think if you turn ads off,
you can do it.
Everything gets fixed. You could use like whatever Queen and fucking Michael Jackson.
But the problem with that for my specific thing is I needed to make sure that it wasn't going to get flagged.
Yes.
So you need to look at the monetization to find that, but you can't because you don't have that. If it's someone else
claims
claims
as soon as you turn it on, game off.
So I couldn't look to find out if I was getting flagged, which I needed. So that's why I needed to have this cleared properly so I could do it. Do you look at? I have a buddy that he runs the Hard Times, the website, the funny comedy website, and I used to do stuff with them. And he's like an entrepreneur, and he's like built and sold some successful companies and stuff like that. But everything he does is back to like punk. Like, you know, he'll be like in these meetings with like really high end people and he'll tell me about them. And it's always funny to me. He'll be like, you know, oh yeah, it's like kind of like when you're selling t-shirts, like everything's back to like punk tours to him. Right. And I kind of feel like that. Like I kind of look at everything like a little like music, which is why I look things maybe different than a lot of comedians, even though I've been doing this for 15 years and way longer than the other stuff. But it's okay. So my question is, do you look at like everything kind of like club promoting a little bit?
Correct.
Yeah. Like
all the time.
Yeah, the one thing yeah.
All the time. It's the only thing it's like, what do you know best? You know how there's a rule, I need to learn this because I keep meaning to bring it up. There's something that happens between the ages of 12 and 17. The music that you listen to when you're going through puberty is like ossified, it's locked in, concretized in you for the rest of your life. You'll always, it seems on average, have a warm place in your heart for the music that you listen to during that period. And maybe it's because of what you were going through as life experiences, or maybe it's something to do with brain development at that time.
Well, my theory is what I said earlier, which is that, well, you're actually a part of the culture that created it and you'll never have that again.
But what if there's a guy who's 35 when you're 35 making music for people that are 35? Does that not mean that you would be part of that culture there? There's something like,
I wouldn't call that a culture.
Because old people don't have culture?
Kind of, no. I mean, that's a little bit true. They might have like thought culture, but like, I don't think that, to be honest, I don't think that they really do have like music and fashion culture. That is like a young man's game.
Your identity gets captured in it.
You can be like a popular artist, but if you have a culture, it's young people. Like, what, you convinced a bunch of 35-year-olds to change their entire identity to like, people don't like change their identity really at that point. You know what I mean?
That's a good
And
point.
start dressing a different way, and you know.
So in the same way as that happens with music, when you're young, I think that whatever the first thing that you learn to sort of frame the world, especially the world of business, networking, social networks, stuff like that, whatever that is, you just sort of I'm sure if you were a trader, if me and you had been traders straight out of college or whatever, like, right, working at Goldman Sachs, the 80-hour weeks and the 3-gram bags of cocaine, and you go, for the rest of your life, you would just be talking about free alpha and, you know, like there's a lot of volatility in the system today. You just use
I do that a little now, but yeah, I know. Of course, I get your point.
You would have that as the frame. So I guess that's the
lessons are all like universal, but you need to plug in, like, you know, it's just like if you're teaching math to someone, it's like, you know, what's the thing? You're like, okay, this guy's selling apples. Like, so apples.
Give me a fucking analogy.
Yeah. So you need kind of like a world that you funnel every lesson through in some way, because the lessons are somewhat universal, I guess, right?
Almost everything is how can we make this queue look longer, which is basically how can you make something look more popular than it is if you need to play with that level of popularity. So in nightclubs, the length of the queue is indicative of how busy and popular the event is, but the length of the queue is determined more by the width of the queue than the number of people in it. So you can just make a longer queue by taking it from 5 people wide to 3 people wide. So if you push the barriers up against the wall, it makes the queue way longer. Yeah. So we realized if we kept it 2 people wide, we needed fewer door staff because they couldn't push as much, and it made the queue look fucking massive.
So you're always kind of like, is this actually bigger, or did they make it look
bigger? Exactly. If they just created this funnel that sort of squeezes stuff down. One of the other cool things that we did, there's this problem in the UK. Nightclubs are open pretty much everywhere until 2 or 3 in the morning in a city centre. And a lot of the city centres have got residences that live there, and not everyone is obviously a degenerate student that's supposed to be awake at that time. So noise abatement orders, as they're called, trying to reduce the number of like antisocial incidents that occur and the amount of noise that people make. So we were thinking, what is a way that we can get people into taxis quickly, shut them up, and sober them up as they walk out of the door? One of the things that we decided was we're going to give like little kids lollies out, buckets, like good-looking girls stood on the door with buckets of lollies. People would take them, put them in their mouth, and they'd shut up because they had a lolly in their mouth and they're busy tasting this nice thing, and everyone would just shut up. So we managed to fix all of our noise abatement problems by just I've given away all of the secrets of my whole business here.
Well, you're not doing it anymore.
Oh yeah, my business partner is though, so you might still want them. Anyway, sorry, Darren. But we gave those out and it sobered people up a little bit, got them into taxis more quickly. It was like all of these tiny little things.
That's great. Yeah,
so I'm always thinking about like,
tips.
All right, what's one of the things that we can do to improve people's exit experience and make them behave in the way that we want? So like little bits and pieces like that. I mean, comedians know this intuitively. You have a peak of the set, and then you have an end of the set. And often those two things are the same, right? You often finish on very strong jokes or one of the strongest jokes.
Kind of like the classic theory. Yeah.
But why? Well, it's because the way that human memory works when we're remembering experiences, the most emotionally intense and the last part of the experience are the two that stick in memory the most. So it's called the peak end rule. So Daniel Kahneman got super famous for this work. They got people to do, I think it was like colonoscopies or endoscopies or something. And they were able to track how long someone had been under this procedure and the amount of movement of the camera or whatever. More movement of the camera would mean more discomfort, so that should be higher pain. And obviously, if it's over a longer period of time, people should also find it more uncomfortable because it's been more pain for longer, right? If pain is like intensity times duration,
Okay.
in retrospect. So first iteration of the study, they did this particular procedure, finished it, and got people to rate in retrospect how painful it was. Second version of the study, they did the exact same procedure, but then just left the camera in for a while, a minute or a couple of minutes, not moving. So there was significantly less pain at the end, even though objectively it had existed for longer, so it should be more uncomfortable. But retrospectively, people in the second group rated it way more comfortable than people in the first group, even though objectively it was more uncomfortable. Why? Well, because the end, which is one of the most important things that people remember about an experience, was the thing that they colored most of the experience with, which is the reason why comedians should finish on their best joke, bands should finish on their most popular song, nightclubs should ensure that the way that they finish a night is with everybody's hands in the air and all the rest of it. If you've got a kid that's scared of going to the dentist, what you shouldn't do is allow them to leave while they're still scared. You should leave them in there so that their lingering memory of that thing is the dentist.
That's actually a pretty good point.
Dentist being nice. They give them a sticker. Do you ever get stickers when you went to the dentist?
I think so.
I had like a little
dinosaurs and stuff,
thing, a little pass book, and each time I went in. So what is it? Well, you're excited because you get a sticker at the end. And
I don't think you could buy me off with a sticker.
Were you too clever for that?
Yeah, you were a little easier to buy off.
Peak well, look, dude, I was a simple British man. Peak end rule, and every comedian uses it.
Yeah, it's laws of nature like that you want to sometimes fight against, but they don't. It is. I feel like the same as all the stuff you do, but in comedy, you also realize like how manipulatable the human brain is. And I'm sure like pickup artists and stuff like that, realize that's why they become cynical a little bit. But I always think the one that's funny to me is, like obviously you do 3 sets a night sometimes for, 15 years or whatever it is. Like, exactly like this was better, right? So I've had a few jokes where I did one of my special where I was kind of doing like a thing about pedophiles, if you remember. And then the joke was like, oh, no, you guys don't want that. And then I kind of did something worse and I'm like, okay, no one laughed at that. But I just say that, like it actually gets a big laugh. I just say like, oh, nothing on, like, because the joke is I'm going to keep doing something. I'm going to keep, it's like the joke is eventually that I just tricked you 4 times. Right. But I've had a lot of people come up to me and being like, they weren't, obviously that crowd wasn't feeling that, but I thought that was the funniest part. And I'm like, yeah, everyone thought that. Like, I just said that, I just told you that no one was laughing. Everyone was actually laughing, but it's like, all it takes is for me to tell you like, oh, you guys don't like that one, eh? And everyone in their mind was like, oh, no one likes that one. And then they come up to me and be like, I don't know why no one liked that one. I'm like, you were there, you heard everyone laugh, but then I told you that no one laughed. And in your mind, you were like, you left being, so you could, the opposite of that is you tell people like, oh yeah, you guys really liked that one, eh? And they were just like, oh, I guess that joke killed.
Yeah.
Like you just tell them how they thought about things
good.
a lot
We're having
of times.
so much fun. Isn't this so great? I love being here. Well, I mean, it's the same as
this is really fun, eh? We're having a fun time.
I got to tell you guys, Dallas, you have been the best crowd of this entire tour. It's like, hey, guess what? That's the script for everywhere. Why? Because it makes you feel special. I think there's a bit, maybe this is just my only child syndrome coming through, but when I watch comedy, a lot of the time I think about the comedian and I think about my direct relationship with this person that doesn't know that I exist. And I think what you're playing into, maybe a little bit, that total bro science theory, what you might be playing into is people, because all of my other ones are so well-grounded.
Love a good bro science theory, man.
I think that a good part of it is the audience really wants to feel like they're watching this person on stage that everybody's attention is on and is very admirable and competent, and they respect them, and they kind of want to be that a little bit, and they're trying to find the bits of them that are like that are the center of attention, that are performance, that are superior. And if you tell people a thing that makes them feel like their realization was unique to them, like, oh, we don't like that, we don't like that joke, and you think to yourself, well, I did, and by liking it, I'm like, oh, I'm one of the chosen ones.
Yeah, I'm
one
cool.
of his crew. Yeah, I'm cool. I wonder whether it plays into that.
There's an old saying in art. I mean, I always just say everything's old saying. I don't know if it is old or not, but that it's like, you know, having an audience. A lot of times, it's not about whether they like you. It's about whether they want you to like them. You know. So if you have like an audience, like really, if you're really killing, it's not so much that they're like, I love this guy. What they really are thinking is like, I think he would like me. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this guy would this guy would like to hang out with me. And then they come out after you like, yo, you're just one of my buddies. You would love and so there's this kind of weird dichotomy where it's like, yeah, you're more, so then, but if they want you to like them, like, because they're like, oh, this guy would like me, they want you to like them. And then all of a sudden they're like, they find themselves like trying to get into it more because they like want you to think they're cool.
Yeah.
So there's
this guy, Mike Israetel. Have you come across?
Yeah, we had him on our podcast.
No fucking way.
Yeah.
How was that?
Great. He's the best.
Unreal. Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Mike was telling me this story
Funny dude.
about why he learned game and pickup. And he said one of the reasons was that when he used to be very intimidated by attractive women, and he just found himself not being able to be himself. So he'd be hanging out with them or whatever. And he'd be like laughing at jokes that aren't funny and like playing, like doing, he was like, who is that? Like, who is stepping inside of my skin?
Yeah, what are you doing, buddy?
Yeah. And doing this thing because of you, because there's something. So he was getting warped by that. And I suppose it's not too dissimilar to the audience seeing the comedian that they want to like them. So like laughing, even giving more grace than they should to jokes that aren't that funny because they think, oh, well, I should make him like, if I like.
But it's subconscious. It's kind of, with the Mike Israetel thing too. I was thinking that with the red pill stuff, like I think you've probably had this conversation, but you know, whether or not they have good points or bad points or whatever, but it's kind of like there's the one central problem where for some guys, they put two girls on too much of a pedestal, which is that, and then you aren't able to like not need them, which is like a very, you know, attractive thing for women is you don't need them. One of the ways to get there is to sleep with a ton of women. Now you have an abundance mindset.
Yes.
One of the ways, but it's not the only way. So I think that's real. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, that is one path to solve that problem is like, do everything you can to like get so good at women that now you've slept with a ton and now it's like, oh, and now it's nothing.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that the real answer is like, well, yeah, but you could also get there a different way.
Talking about the edge cases thing, I think that a lot of the dating advice online, maybe not quite so much the red pill stuff, but some of it, but especially the black pill, more incel-y world, a lot of that is edge cases. It's guys that are, I think in the incel community, there's a 10x.
Incel community is a funny word.
It exists.
Community.
The community of incels. There's 10 times the normal rates of autism in there. Right. So what you're talking about is by design, a psychological, like a non-typical setup for men who are struggling with women. You go, this proves that women are this, that, and the other. Go, well, you wouldn't say that for most other, you wouldn't say this proves that bicycles don't work because for people that have only got one leg, that is, you know, only a small portion of the population.
That's so funny saying they don't work to girls. You're like, girls are broken.
Yeah, but that's kind of it. That like the typical mating. That's what blue pill is. Blue pill is like you believe the sort of Disney princess, the handsome, charming guy is going to get the girl, and he just needs to play along and be nice and all that stuff. And yeah, it's like I think that much of dating advice is coming from edge cases, both for men and for women.
Well, and it probably is it's always that way because you're like, who else needs it?
Yeah, the people that are happily married, they're not trawling Reddit looking for like stories about how to get it back at her, that girl that broke your heart when you were this age. So yeah, it's the edge case thing is interesting.
Yeah, that 100%. I always kind of felt that there's there's a lot of, even like when Jordan Peterson first came out, there was a part of it that I felt like he was really good at, the make your bed, talking to the 5% people. But to me, I was kind of like, I was more attracted to advice that's like, okay, you're pretty good at stuff, how to get great. You know what I mean?
So that,
as opposed to like how to get out of bed, which goes back to
that's a really interesting point, because I've moved through the trajectory. I've been like each different level of like uselessness within the Jordan Peterson verse.
That's interesting.
So I went from fuck, I really need to hear that telling the truth is something very important, I'm basically a man-child at 27.
Yeah.
To he is interesting and I admire the way that he debates sort of these important topics, to now some of the stuff that you're talking about symbolically to do with religion and the collapse of the Western Judeo-Christian, I'm like, it's maybe just not for me anymore, and I don't listen to the old stuff quite so much either, but there's certain elements I really want to dig into. But it's like how grading systems in fucking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu work, right? Like you start off as a white belt, and the techniques that you're learning as a white belt and the ways that you're using them when you're a black belt are very different, and that's what personal growth is. Now, for me, I needed the like, hey, fucking tell the truth, stand up straight with your shoulders back, stop being such a pussy, like those, pick up a burden and carry it, whatever his thing was. That was a big deal. And then as you start to grow, you go, okay, I need to let that go. What you hope is that the person you're learning from is growing with you. And one of the problems that you have of this goes back to your, like, are you a part of a scene? Are you part of a trend thing? What I think an advantage that you have if you are the same age as your audience, as a writer, as a poet, as an artist, as a singer, as a whatever, is that you get to basically just be 2 steps ahead of where everybody that's consuming your shit is, and you just leave little breadcrumbs behind you the way that you go. This would be the best older brother in the world, or older sister in the world. Yeah, and if someone gets
too far ahead, they leave. So it's like by design, it stays that way.
Yes. So you're just sort of chugging along, and
best older brother is a good way to find. That's the advice you're supposed to be finding.
Yeah. Like here's a thing that I dealt with, and you're dealing with it now, and you're like 4 years behind me or whatever, or 10 years behind me or something like that. And I remember what it used to be like that. And these are the challenges that you're going to face. And I was in it too. And you go, fuck. But then as you keep...
Sometimes you just need someone to be like, you're not crazy for thinking about that. That is actually a real problem that you need to solve.
Such a big part of it, to just feel less lonely. And like...
Well, I wasn't even... That's true, but I wasn't even saying on the lonely thing. I was saying like, okay, here would be like a lot of, tech and bro advice when it kind of started first popping off, probably, maybe 15 years ago, right? Spot you've taken over. But, a lot of it was very, I remember, when you're trying to build something and then you're kind of like, how do you tell like someone you're dating that, like, okay, can I slot, do you want to hang out? Like, how about Thursday? And the girl being like, you fucking slot me in. And you in your mind, you're like, well, I can only run my life and like, and you're just like, what? So you have like, this is your mandatory like hanging out with me time for 3 hours, like that and that would seem like an unsolvable problem. That was kind of like, I'd in some degree probably written it off when I was younger to being like, yeah, girls are a pain in the ass. Like that's really where I probably ended up on that. But then I think there was people talking about it, you're like, yeah, duh. Like if you're trying to build something, like people aren't gonna be that receptive to it. No. Like, and you're gonna have to figure out a way to like make that, and I'll tell you what the answer isn't. Explaining to them over and over, like, you don't understand, this is important and you need to be understanding of how that ain't the answer.
No.
The answer is to sort of not lie, but like you almost kind of figure out the way to do this in a way that's like respectful of how they're going to see it. And like, it's crazy. Like a game. You're like, yeah, that's a hard equation and you need to like maneuver it. And it's like, or don't and stay where you are. Like,
correct.
Yeah. And it was like, but if you are going to try that, it's like building a company. It's not, you want an easy answer. You're like, no, this is hard. That actually is hard to do.
There's that Thomas Sowell quote where he says, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. And
that
fucking everything just comes back to that. So I was whining.
You want the money or the hooker?
Correct.
Can't have both.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you like kill her afterward, in which case.
Now we're talking.
Speaking of that, there's this YouTube channel. I think it's got maybe 3,000 subs. It's called Tea Palettes. And one of my friends sent me it earlier on. He's just like some kid on the internet, but happens to be the best investigative journalist for internet shit ever. So this hasn't even broken, but this kid has done a ton of work. He just dropped a huge video on the Romanian mafia's links with Andrew Tate, and it's like geolocated on Google Maps.
Is he saying Tate's tapped into the...
They've left. Tate said it himself that he was working with the Romanian mafia. That was why he started all of these casinos
with
in
the
Romania.
gambling stuff.
Yes. Okay. So that was why he started them. And this kid has like geolocated it on Google Maps, worked out where they are, then done Romanian Facebook photo caption analysis to reverse engineer where all of these guys are. Then he looked at their tattoos to work out which one was the captain, and there's different shaped stars for different levels of lieutenant and general and all within the fucking Romanian mafia. Like looking at Romanian police records and trying like doing all of this shit. It's fucking wild.
Sick.
But this gang, so what he found out, they own all of these casinos and stuff, and it was mostly slot machines. It wasn't playing poker or whatever. And this gang, if someone won the jackpot, they would wait for them to collect their money, and when they went outside, just beat them up and take the money back.
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, pretty good scam.
Absolutely, like flawless system.
Yeah.
So there was this one video of this dude who wins $110,000 in Romanian rupees or whatever it is, and the machine's going off, and one of the attendants just comes over and unplugs the machine. Bro,
wow,
it's crazy. This is the Romanian mafia, but they stated in some police report. The only reason I went down this rabbit hole is because Tate's having it out with Sean Strickland at the moment. Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of been going back and forth for a long time, right?
Happened again, like today or whatever, recently. But yeah, someone that wins money in your casino, finding out because they need to put their address in where they live, and then just going around to the house after they've won and they've got money and beating them up and taking your money back is the most GTA solution there is.
Yeah.
That's the killing the hooker after, so you can have your cake and eat it too, I suppose. Fuck yeah.
Okay, I gotta take a piss so bad. You want to wrap?
We're all good. Where should people go? Special, your
definitely
stuff?
check out my special. Seems like the response has been pretty good so far. So it just came out, youtube.com/Ryan Long Comedy, free on my channel. Check it out. My podcast is The Boys Cast, but also I'm just going to say a few dates because I'm doing this crazy tour. But if you are, come out. The tours have been awesome, and I'm doing a new hour: Fort Wayne, Louisville, Saratoga Springs, Philadelphia, Nashville, Chicago, Las Vegas, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Portland, and then more.
I appreciate you, man. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're the best. All right.
And we're out. Go piss. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, well, why don't you watch me and Mark Norman sat right here in these very same seats? Go on.